When the heroine opened her eyes, she realized that everything around was incredibly dark, cold, and dreary. Suddenly, a shining hole appeared in the darkness, from which someone's voices could be heard. Gradually, this hole grew larger, and a certain Mr. Roman was glad that their research was completed successfully. From the conversations, it became clear that Roman is the master of the magic tower. The heroine heard this name recently in a novel she read, where the guy was the main character's magic teacher, and his appearance suited her, so the girl decided that she had become the heroine of a novel. The girl tried to look around and understand what kind of hero she had become. She saw a luxurious room around her and Roman's friendly attitude, so she assumed that she was the main character. If she had known that this would happen, she would have read the novel to the end, because at the very beginning, the heroine had a very hard time. Roman picked up the heroine and spun her around above him. Only after that did she notice her strange hands. The girl realized that she herself was reborn as a penguin, and Roman was her father. The heroine transformed into a character that has characteristics of both a human and an animal. In this novel, the main character, half human, half wolf, imprinted a mark on the main character who treated him. The so-called mark is a characteristic of the heir to the blood of the first beastman wolf. It is a one-sided love contract that forever binds the half-beast to the object he has imprinted. In the novel, it all looked romantic, but for the object, he does crazy things without hesitation, so it was love bordering on mental illness. After being imprinted, the protagonist becomes obsessed with the protagonist. The girl read this novel in her past life before she died, so she remembered the content up to the part she had managed to read. However, she read only half of it, because the heroine was treated very badly, so she did not understand the nature of this work very well. Now she was most surprised that she was reborn as a penguin, whom they decided to name Adelia. The girl didn't understand at all how a penguin appeared in a romantic fantasy. She was even disappointed by this, because it was impossible to live normally with such an appearance. The father doted on his beloved penguin, but there was a big problem. The girl was reborn not as the main character, and not even as a character in her circle. She was born as a pet penguin in a magic laboratory. The heroine was unhappy that out of all the possible options, she got such a terrible body. However, her sadness quickly dissipated, and the girl fully adapted to her new life. Her father had many responsibilities, but he doted on his beloved penguin. He had been carefully raising her, born from a test egg, for the last 4 years. She was given a full luxury buffet exclusively for penguins and was fed various delicacies. The girl was also dressed in the best studios, and all the outfits were tailored specifically to her measurements. She even had her own pool just for penguins, which was built after she was born. Even in her past life, the girl had never encountered such love. But even if she could turn into a human, she would want to return. She felt especially lonely on a dark night, so she sincerely wished and believed that even animals could become beastmen. However, her prayers had no effect on the standards of this world, and no matter how hard she tried, she could not acquire a human form. Because of all this, the girl periodically had sad thoughts, and she missed her past life. One day, Roman said that he was incredibly happy that his beautiful daughter was just a penguin. The girl was very surprised that her father sincerely hated the beastmen. Dad remembered being chased by beastmen as a child, and actually felt a terrible dislike for them because he knew that purebred humans were looked down upon as an inferior race. The heroine did not want the man who first loved her to hate her. She decided that she would simply stop dreaming about the impossible, because it was enough for her to be near such a loving parent. When the girl accepted everything and came to terms with reality, an annoying guy suddenly appeared. He came to see that very baby penguin, who, according to Roman, died and could not survive. This guy turned out to be Cyrodiil Vale, a human killer whale, and his appearance sounded like an emergency signal in the girl's head. He was suspicious. He had such a beautiful face that a man with such a face could not be a minor character. The killer whale is supposed to have black and white hair, and the guy is supposed to have surprisingly silver hair, but the heroine chalked it all up to cliches. What was even more suspicious was that the whale family was originally a secondary family with no explanation. However, here it was, a family that had conquered a continent, and the character's hair was also suspicious. The girl believed that a person could change the original narrative, but she did not believe that a pathetic penguin was capable of this. Cyrodiil looked closely at the penguin and noticed that he was actually a penguin lover. He admitted that this was the first time he had seen an individual who was not afraid of his appearance. Roman was afraid for his daughter, because killer whales were famous for their love of feeding on penguins. The girl quickly understood everything and made a threatening appearance, intending to protect herself. However, Cyrodiil only grinned and stated that he had never tasted penguin. He still didn't understand why all the creatures around him were insanely afraid of him, except for this little one. After this, the young man leaned towards the penguin and stated that he was interested in him, and if the penguin is not afraid of him at all, then they can definitely become good friends. The guy poked Adelia in the face with his finger and hoped that she would answer him. However, the girl only became angry because the guy dared to hit her so unceremoniously. Cyrodiil decided that the penguin did not like being touched on the cheek, so he decided to try touching the beak. However, the girl really didn't like this, so she immediately bit his finger. Roman was surprised by the penguin's behavior when he saw blood dripping onto the floor. Even the heroine was shocked by her actions, because she did not want to harm the guy so much. However, Cyrodiil was not worried at all, because thanks to his magic, he could easily heal the wound. After this, the guy said that the more he looked at the heroine, the more he liked her. He was especially attracted by her crazy eyes, after which the girl realized that her actions would not lead to anything good. After the first meeting, Cyrodiil came again and was amazed at the penguin's reaction to his appearance. He stated that he felt very embarrassed when the penguin looked at him like that. The next day, the guy came to their house again and noticed that they had become closer. The next day, he came again, and then again and again, each time trying to spend as much time as possible with his new friend. The girl didn't understand why this guy wasn't tired of behaving like this yet. He didn't care that she openly expressed her dislike for him. She had never seen such a character. The girl remembered that Cyrodiil had recently used magic to heal his wound. It was unusual that a werewolf could use it, because in the original story, magic was only available to pure-blooded people. Dad told her that the Veil were the only family of beastmen that used magic that was only available to humans. There were a few suspicious points about that. Penguin didn't know if the original plot was actually distorted or if it was from the second part, which she hadn't seen. The girl was curious to know what this guy's true nature was, and with these thoughts, she fell asleep. The heroine had no idea what would happen to her while she was trying to figure out the true nature of Cyrodiil. The next morning, she woke up as usual, but suddenly turned into a human. Adelia was surprised that her wish finally came true after so many attempts. She was surprised and alarmed by her sudden transformation after so many years. The girl was worried about whether her father would be able to accept her, because he hated people like her. The heroine didn't want her dad to see her like this, so she wanted to turn into an animal first. However, the girl realized that she had absolutely no idea how to transform back. At that moment, she heard her father's voice, who was about to enter her room, and she became scared. The father came to the girl to invite her to go for a walk with him. However, the heroine could not do this, so she had no choice but to run away. The heroine jumped off the balcony and ran away, mentally apologizing to her parent. She only planned to leave for a while and come back as a beast. But things turned out differently. When the girl woke up again, she realized that someone had tied her up and kidnapped her. This happened an hour after she left home, and even her savings were all taken. The criminals couldn't be happier that they had managed to find the beast man that Veil had been looking for. They immediately recognized the girl by her black and white hair, and were happy because now they wouldn't have to worry about money for many years. Adelia didn't understand why someone from this family was looking for her, so she assumed that it was an order from Cyrodiil, who was not supposed to know her human form. Just at this moment, the people who ordered the kidnapping arrived and decided to take a look at the man they had brought. Cyrodiil approached the cart and moved the cloth aside to examine the find. After this, it immediately became clear to the girl that it was his family who was behind her kidnapping. She assumed that the guy had been following her like a stalker all this time, and then organized the kidnapping. It seemed to the girl that the young man was looking at her suspiciously for a long time, examining her. She thought that she should have gouged out his eyes long ago, but she noticed a strange reaction from the hero. The next one to approach the cart was the boy's mother, who was horrified at how badly the girl was being treated. Bella, who was the head of the family, ordered the immediate release of the poor thing. Cyrodiil obeyed the woman and immediately began to untie the ropes on the girl and removed the gag from her mouth. This reaction seemed strange to the heroine, and she assumed that the entire kidnapping was not his doing. Suddenly, Cyrodiil said that he felt something strange when he was near the girl. It seemed to him that they knew each other, as if they had spent a lot of time together. At this time, the kidnappers noticed the strange reaction of the customers and wanted to quickly get away. Bella was angry because her family had been looking for relatives for a long time, and not criminals who needed to be transported in such a state. Therefore, she did not understand why the men so roughly tied up and brought this tender child to her. She reminded them that kidnapping was a crime, so she ordered the guards to catch and put the criminals in prison immediately. After this, the woman apologized to the heroine for what happened. She turned to the girl and promised that she would return her home safe and sound. Adelia realized that the family was indeed looking for a child like her, but did not want to bring her here in this way. However, the girl still had not learned to turn back into an animal, so she was afraid to return back to the magic tower. So she asked her new acquaintances to teach her how to transform back into a beast from her human form. She knew there were many like her in this family, and she had a feeling it would be fun there. The heroine said that initially she was in the form of an animal, but suddenly became a human, but did not know how to return to that form, so she could not return home. She didn't want to hurt someone she loved, so she wanted to learn how to turn into a beast. Bella said that she cannot learn to turn into an animal separately, because it happens intuitively. She added that it might take some time, so she offered to stay in their house temporarily. Bella added that they were actually looking for a child similar to her, because she can no longer have children after an accident. That's why they spent decades searching for fellow tribesmen, so that their lineage would not be cut short. But in the end, the woman was unable to find anyone who looked like her, let alone relatives. That's why the girl's appearance in her house was like a real miracle. Adelia didn't quite understand what Bella meant, but they needed her. The girl had no other choice, so she decided to stay in this house for a while and try to find a way to turn into an animal. So the girl agreed to live in their house and was now waiting for a room to be prepared for her. The heroine had the impression that she was missing something important, because she did not understand why Bella was so worried about her. It was only when she passed the window that Adelia was able to see her human form for the first time. She saw black hair like Bella's, white flecks of a similar shape, and even white hair on the inside. Only at that moment did the girl realize that the woman was so kind to her because she mistook her for a killer whale. The girl decided that they really considered her to be a killer whale like them, because before that, she had not been herself. But now, having calmed down, she realized that her appearance and Bella's were very similar. She was surprised that the spots of the killer whale and the penguin were in the same location. First, she needed to pull herself together for the sake of her father, who was worried about her, because she needed to get used to communicating with animals as soon as possible and return. The girl didn't want to deceive them, so she thought it would be better to admit now that she was a penguin. However, she didn't know how Cyrodiil would act after he found out who she really was. That's why the girl hesitated and missed the moment to confess. Bella noticed that she still didn't know the name of their new guest. While the heroine was trying to come up with a new name for herself, Cyrodiil unexpectedly decided to call her Leah. He explained that if the girl didn't have her own name, he could just call her Leah. Initially, the girl was scared that the guy recognized her and pretended that she really liked the name. Cyrodiil explained that the girl he was courting was named Adelia, or affectionately, Leah, so he was glad that she liked the name. The heroine was unhappy with his words, because in fact it was a female penguin, and his visits were not courtship at all. However, Cyrodiil was little concerned about the girl's name. He was more amused by the fact that she was not afraid of him at all. Having looked at the young man more closely, the girl realized that he looked very good. She almost fell for his looks, but she held back and noted that she saw no reason to be afraid. She said that there was no point in her being afraid of someone who couldn't eat her. Cyrodiil smiled and asked where she was so sure that he wouldn't eat her. The heroine could not explain that it was because of his own admission that he did not eat penguins. Unexpectedly, Cyrodiil came closer to the girl and carefully grabbed her head with his hand. However, he turned everything into a joke and asked the girl not to worry, promising that he would not touch the creatures of his race. Leah was embarrassed by his behavior and jokes about how he could swallow her in one bite. She even called the guy a cheater after he said that he likes gullible people and laughed at her. Leah remembered that even when she was a penguin, the guy continued to behave this way. Suddenly, the young man said that he really liked the girl's voice. Cyrodiil didn't know what to do, because now he liked Leah, standing in front of him even more. The girl did not understand his words, but she considered the guy crazy for such nonsense. After this, Bella and Cyrodiil left, asking the staff to prepare a room for the girl. The young man noticed that a little time had passed since her transformation, but the communication went surprisingly smoothly. Bella agreed with him, because the girl was too good to live like an animal. She was afraid that her mind had matured when Leah was still an animal, because that was bad. The greater the intelligence, the greater the mental pain. Suradel didn't know whether to trust the girl, since they had never seen her in the form of an animal. However, Bella was sure that Leah was a killer whale, looking at her hair, which was not dyed or treated with magic. Moreover, the woman was surprised why Suradel decided to give the girl the name of the penguin he visited every day. However, the guy just smiled and admitted that he just really liked it. The woman did not understand what the guy was thinking, because he could not fall in love at first sight. However, she had a feeling of confidence that the girl was right for them. Bella believed that their family was over, and that there was hope now. But Suradel was not happy with her words. For a long time, Bella was obsessed with her family, because at some point, she was the last representative. This very fact gave her more of a sense of responsibility than she had imagined. As long as she was alive, she was going to do everything in her power, because she didn't want to experience this terrible feeling anymore. Suradel understood this perfectly well, but asked Bella not to shift all the responsibility onto the girl. The woman promised to help the girl adapt to society and meet a good man, because her partner does not have to be a killer whale, and she does not have to continue their family. Unexpectedly, Suradel asked what the woman expected from him, since he was also a killer whale. Bella was surprised by his words, because before the guy had never even thought about marriage. She couldn't believe that Suradel could really fall in love at first sight. However, the guy himself noted that this was impossible, asking whether his mother wanted him to enter into a relationship with someone. Suddenly, the woman asked the young man to come closer to her. Then, without warning, she gave him a hard blow on the back, which was intended to bring him to his senses. She stated that no one thinks about breaking up before they even start dating. She assumed that the guy regretted meeting her in Fremo. Suradel thought that it was a little different, so he did not regret what happened at all. At this point, their conversation ended, and Bella asked the guy to go with the girl to the shopping street. Leah had to stay in the house for a while, so she might need something. The master of the house was due back soon, so the woman wanted to stay and prepare for his arrival with the servants. Suradel even offered to buy a gift for his father while they were walking down the street, but it was too much for him to do it alone. After that, the guy turned around and said that he would go and ask the girl out on a date. Bella reminded him that he would only be accompanying her as a security guard. At this time, Leah realized that she had been living, considering their house to be the best, but she really liked this room. She felt a little guilty about the fact that the girl had gotten all this only because of her lies. However, she was glad that she had finally truly become a human, as she had wished for a long time. The girl looked closely at herself in the mirror and saw beautiful wavy hair with a unique pattern. She also had blue eyes, reminiscent of the color of the sea. Leah was happy with her appearance, but she didn't understand why she looked small and weak. She believed that penguins had some kind of height limit, since before her transformation, she was taller than average. The girl held back only because of her beautiful face, and besides, it was a miracle achieved in only 4 years. She really missed having fingers instead of wings, because it greatly limited her in life. Now that she had become human, the girl decided to find a way to turn back. In the meantime, she was going to avoid Suradel and the killer whales so as not to get into trouble. What she missed most was her dad, and she realized that something was always bothering her. The girl wanted to find a way to save her father, because in the original story, a plague that only affects purebred people will soon spread. The plague will spread so quickly that it will shake the entire world, and the only pure-blooded person left alive will be the main character. The story then moves on to a girl who is left alone and upset after losing her only teacher, and falls in love with the main character who consoles her. The girl couldn't do anything while she was a penguin, but now she could find a way to save her father, even if it meant changing the original story. Suradel knocked on the door of the room and announced his arrival to the girl. He smiled and said that he came to her because he missed Leah. The heroine could not understand him either when she was a penguin or now, because the guy showed increased interest in her, and at some point she even thought that Suradel was one of those who hit on every girl he met. The heroine decided to treat him with suspicion and even took a few steps back. She understood that attacks on her appearance would not work on her now. Leah realized that the guy who was the most out of the original story was next to her, so she decided that he might be the key to changing the original work, and wondered why the killer whale had silver hair and was small in stature. Suradel noted that it is difficult to determine the type of animal by its appearance, since so many animals have common characteristics. Moreover, the guy noticed that the girl herself was a killer whale, but she was very small in stature. Leah did not succumb to his provocation and noticed that killer whales also have their own distinctive features. The guy was surprised that she was so interested, but promised to tell her. However, instead of a normal answer, he just winked and said that it was a secret. Leah was incredibly angry and didn't understand how much longer the guy was going to make fun of her. Cyrodiil immediately backtracked and stated that the hair was a genetic mutation. However, the girl did not believe him and demanded that he prove his belonging to this species. The guy was embarrassed that she wanted to see him in his natural state. At first, Leah didn't even understand what the catch was, until she saw the strange expression on the young man's face. Only after that did she realize that their conversation had a hidden meaning. The girl became embarrassed and said that she wanted to see him in his beast form. She was irritated and asked Cyrodiil to stop pretending because he understood perfectly well what she was talking about. After this, the girl got tired of arguing with him and said that the guy doesn't have to show her anything if he doesn't want to. However, Cyrodiil was not satisfied with this option, and he offered to show his true appearance in exchange for hers. However, the girl became embarrassed and reminded that she did not know how to turn back into a beast. She understood that she couldn't reveal who she really was, because the guy mistook her for a killer whale. Even if she learns to turn, she will never see the young man's true form, because she is just a penguin from a magic tower. However, Cyrodiil stated that he could wait for her to learn, and was actually more patient than he appeared. They will go to their family's land and an island surrounded by sea. It will be better for the female orca to train on the island with her comrades after she gets used to life in the house. Leah was scared because if her identity came out during training on the island, she would not be able to escape. The girl wanted to train on the mainland, but the Cyrodiil noted that without water, it would be difficult. Bella was upset because the killer whale cannot be content with small bodies of water. They need scope. Leah didn't know what to do. She planned to come back after learning to act like a real beast man. The girl wanted to learn how to turn into a beast and run away immediately, but in the meantime, she asked how the family got along in the city house. Cyrodiil noticed that they stay in human form longer than others, and they also use movement magic, so they can get to their territories at any time. They often had to leave home, so most of the servants were from a different family. Beast-like people must periodically return to animal form, otherwise they will become very tired and will be forced to turn into an animal. That's why, in the original story, the Vale family in the middle of the street couldn't move because they had to turn into animals on the island, so they couldn't stay in the capital for long. The girls were curious about how they were able to use magic, which was not the case in the original. She knew that the family's special ability had a strong influence on the family. Wolves become knights due to their superior bodies, and elephants have dexterity of hand and become masters. And foxes, which have an attractive appearance, often become the main characters of various scandals. The girl realized that the original did not say what kind of family trait the killer whales had. Suddenly, the young man leaned towards the girl and asked why she called him by his full name. The heroine was surprised by his question and believed that she should call him young master. Cyrodiil just laughed and explained that he had not meant such a formal address, but something a little nicer. However, Leah immediately made it clear to him that if he wanted to hear sweet appeals, he could go to someone else for that. The guy admitted that he just wanted her to address him a little more affectionately. He noted that this method would help them get closer faster. The girl said that she wasn't worth it, since they were seeing each other for the first time today. The hero froze for a second, then smiled and admitted that she had completely forgotten about it. The young man was unusually animated when he asked the girl to tell him her first impression of him. Leah tried to say that she didn't like him at all, but she couldn't even look at this guy who sparkled with his beauty. She tried with all her might to resist his beauty, but she couldn't even take her eyes off him. The girl admitted that the guy was nice. If only he would leave her alone with these questions. She added that she didn't find him pleasant. She just didn't hate him. Suddenly, the young man began to look for something in his pocket and said that he wanted to give something. He threw the stone into the girl's hands and admitted that he was going to give it to another Leah. But she left, so he found a new owner. The girl was amazed by the beauty of the stone because it sparkled and shimmered incredibly. However, she couldn't help but think that Cyrodiil was talking about her penguin appearance. Leah admitted that she could not accept the gift, so it was better to give it to the original recipient. However, the girl was horrified when Cyrodiil said that in that case he had no choice but to throw the stone away. He threw it out the window, and the girl immediately ran to the balcony to see where it had fallen. Cyrodiil stated that he could not give another girl what she had refused. He noticed that Leah was tired, so he suggested that she go to bed early because she had become human and therefore needed many things. The young man promised that tomorrow they would go shopping in the city and he would pay for everything. Leah didn't mind buying something at someone else's expense, so they agreed to meet the next day. Cyrodiil tried to say something else, but the heroine was so carried away by the search for the stone that she did not listen to him at all. She didn't understand why the young man threw such a beautiful stone out into the street. Cyrodiil only smiled, watching the girl mutter something under her breath. That night, Leah tried for a long time to fall asleep, but she couldn't do it because of her anxiety. A lot happened in one day that turned her life upside down. She couldn't get the beautiful image of Cyrodiil, who walked with the girl all day, out of her head. But most of all, she couldn't stop thinking about the beautiful stone that the guy had thrown out the window. The girl admitted to herself that she liked stones, although she also liked ordinary ones. But she liked beautiful and expensive ones the most. Once, when she was a penguin, Cyrodiil asked her if she really liked jewelry so much. And then the guy found out that the penguin's peculiarity was her strange craving for precious stones. After that, he began to bring her more and more precious stones, which he gave in exchange for the cute poses that the penguin took. Of course, as a noble beast, the girl could not ignore this temptation. However, the precious stone that fell into the flower bed was given to her by Cyrodiil. She didn't know what he wanted to say earlier, but she was just going to quickly take the stone and go back. So the girl ran out of her room down the dark corridor, hoping that she could save the stone that was sadly alone in the flower bed. The girl wandered around the corridor for a while, because she still didn't know her way around the house very well. Suddenly, she was writhing with nausea and an incredibly severe headache. Leah remembered feeling exactly the same the night before she became human. Then she also came down with a fever, blaming it all on illness. She thought it was just a mild flu. But when she woke up, she became human. The girl didn't want to lose consciousness, because if she turned into a penguin in the middle of the corridor, her secret would be revealed. However, Leah could not bear it any longer and passed out in the form of an animal, and her pursuer emerged from the shadows. The young man did not understand why he was overworking himself so much, since Leah did not even know the state of her body. He carefully picked up the penguin in his arms and advised the girl to breathe slowly. Through the pain, as if in a dream, Leah heard someone's voice calming her down. It sounded like her dad's voice, because she was actually very scared when she suddenly became human and then was kidnapped. What she feared most was that her father would turn away from her. After all, when she was born as an animal, she was overcome with despair and fear, and her father was the first person who made her understand what family love is. If her father was gone, the girl didn't know how to live on. She had a nightmare, so the penguin cried, and the hero calmed her down. He gently stroked the girl and promised that everything would be fine when she woke up. The next morning, Leah opened her eyes to the bright light and didn't understand why she was feeling so bad. The girl turned around to see what was lying on her, and then saw that it was Cyrodiil. She didn't understand why this young and crazy handsome guy secretly slipped onto her bed. However, at that moment, Cyrodiil opened his eyes and noticed that the girl had climbed into his bed because of her love. Leah couldn't listen to this and jumped up, trying to prove that she was in her room. However, she looked around and saw that she was indeed not in the room she had received from Bella. The girl remembered that just yesterday, she had fainted in the corridor and returned to her penguin form. Cyrodiil was glad that she had come to see him, but it seemed to him that they were in too much of a hurry. But he was still curious as to why the girl was in his room and on his bed. Leah was confused, but still stated that she herself did not remember what happened, because she had already woken up and was here. Cyrodiil stated that animals that have recently become human sometimes show symptoms of fever, revert to animal form, or hallucinate. Leah didn't understand anything from his explanation, but she was glad that she wasn't caught in penguin form. First of all, the girl apologized to the guy for having entered his room without permission. However, Cyrodiil said that he also liked that she had unconsciously come to him. He believed that the girl was intuitively drawn to him, although Leah denied it. In any case, he decided to apologize to the girl for not being able to take care of her. The heroine didn't understand why the guy was telling her this, because it was completely her fault. Cyrodiil carefully covered her hand with his own and noticed that the girl had been enduring the pain alone all night. Even though he wasn't trustworthy yet, he still wanted Leah to come to him even when it hurt a little. Many years had passed since the girl saw the guy every day, and she knew that he was really worried. However, she was here under the guise of a killer whale, so she didn't know whether to come to him and reveal her identity by turning into a penguin. But she still promised that even if she got sick, she would still let him see her. Cyrodiil realized that he needed to lure her with something, so he promised to give her a bag of precious stones in exchange for meetings. Leah immediately recognized that this was her stash, which had been taken away by the kidnappers. Cyrodiil said that he would return her if the girl stopped enduring her pain alone. He added that her transformation into and out of humanity is very unstable, which is why he is worried. The girl found his behavior strange, because before this, the guy had only joked all the time, but now he was serious. The boys came to an agreement and decided that they needed to do something interesting before breakfast. Leah looked quite interested, because she loved all kinds of entertainment. Cyrodiil stated that he needed to go to the training place on business, so they would teleport. The heroine had no need to teleport before, as her father gave her everything she needed in the tower. So now she was looking forward to the moment when she could have a new experience. Leah was very excited because she felt like she was now back in the original novel. Cyrodiil approached the girl and asked her to hold hands so that they could teleport. The penguin was very confused by what was happening, so she first tried to carefully touch him with her fingertips. Cyrodiil said that the girl's naivety, as well as her heartlessness, were very cute. After that, he carefully took Leah's hand, and together they stepped into the magic circle. Exactly the same magic circle formed on the territory of the training ground. Leah was amazed that they actually moved in an instant, because she had only seen this happen in the Mango Tower. However, the unexpected girl noticed that there was an atmosphere filled with fear around her. All the workers were frightened by the appearance of their boss, and Leah assumed that he was very harsh with them. Instead, Cyrodiil asked her to point her finger at those people who were avoiding him. The girl knew that if she pointed to the wrong person, something could happen. So she tried to turn everything into a joke, but the young man did not calm down and demanded an answer from her. He stated that if the girl was not sure of her decision, then they could ask each one in turn. Then, Leah closed her eyes and fearfully pointed at the first person she came across, mentally apologizing to him. However, instead of answering the questions, Leah suddenly asked what kind of animal this guy was turning into. Cyrodiil was interested in how the girl guessed, because judging by the worker's build, no one would have guessed that he was a rodent. She explained that she simply thought that if she stretched his huge, broad back muscles, he would be able to fly like a flying squirrel. However, from her entire phrase, Cyrodiil only noticed that Leah appreciated the guy's huge muscles. He added that he himself was a magical swordsman, and that he also had the muscles that she thought were cool. The guy asked the girl not to look at other males because he was jealous because of it. Leah realized that Cyrodiil could control weapons with magic completely freely, which felt like cheating due to the power of this gift. Cyrodiil suggested a duel to demonstrate his abilities, but the girl knew that his workers were already too scared. The young man remembered the penguin's preferences and promised that next time he would take them into account. Leah didn't know what the guy was up to, but she couldn't stand how he was mistaken about her preferences. She confirmed that she liked muscles, but she liked the way clothes fit perfectly on those solid muscles more than her large frame and rough appearance. Cyrodiil listened carefully to the girl and asked her to give an example of such an appearance. Suddenly, Leah remembered that, as a penguin, she had noticed one oddity. The day she wanted to knock down the guy who was bullying her with one punch, she crashed into him. The girl thought he would be soft because he was a wizard, but his abs turned out to be like stone. Leah realized that if you could take away this guy's bad character, he could be perfect. That's why she directly stated that Cyrodiil was the perfect fit for her preferences. The hero was embarrassed by her confession and declared that his heart was beating so fast that it would soon burst. He was glad that he was to her taste, but he liked the cold and sincere look that looked at him better. Leah just smiled and said that she only liked his appearance, not his character. Cyrodiil stated that he was indeed colder, and the girl was far from him. The young man added that he needed to talk to the commander, so she asked Leah to play a little with the knights. The girl decided to stand aside so as not to interfere with the training, because time flies so quickly when you talk to Cyrodiil. Suddenly, she realized that she was surrounded by guards who were asking her a lot of questions. They wondered if it was possible that their master was abusing the girl. Leah honestly didn't understand why people were interested in this, because it was completely different. The boys were frightened because their master laughed too much. Leah was surprised that the guy usually didn't smile much, because she constantly saw him laughing. However, the workers said that the guy only does this in certain situations, but when he is around a girl, he really does seem different. He usually smiles as he enjoys beatings disguised as sparring. When he makes you run every day, or wear your clothes backwards, or tell you something interesting. Leah was scared when she realized that the guy's interest in her was just mockery. The workers admitted that it was the first time they had seen the gentleman be so kind to anyone else. They even suggested that the young man could have fallen in love with the girl at first sight. However, Leah made a disappointed face and stated that this simply could not be. Cyrodiil's interest is not love. It is similar to the attitude he showed towards her when she was a penguin. The workers said that the gentleman's smile was different from the one he showed them, because he even had a special nickname. They said he was called a laughter therapist, which wasn't all that strange. The guy said that if something happens and someone makes a mistake, then Cyrodiil hits and heals, and so on in a circle. He was nicknamed that because he never lost his smile throughout the entire process. Leah was convinced that this guy was even more crazy than she thought. Just at this moment, Cyrodiil returned and asked what the girl had talked about with the knights. Leah wanted to tell everything, but she saw the reaction of the guys, who begged her to remain silent. She couldn't let them down, so she told them that the boys had highly praised their master's swordsmanship. However, the girl did not want to miss this opportunity to tease the guy a little more, because the penguins were very playful. So Leah wanted the hero to show her how he sparred with something. All the knights immediately began to pray that none of them would be chosen as the master's opponent. Leah noticed that they were all too busy with their training. So the girl changed the subject and asked what the young man wanted to talk about. He asked her to choose several knights to accompany her, as they would be needed in the future. Leah sincerely didn't raise the question of why she needed an escort, since she wasn't some kind of lady. However, Cyrodiil said they, as the Veil family, have a responsibility to protect the endangered orca population. Leah stated that she did not need any escorts, but a couple of maids would not hurt at all. The guy was surprised, because the girl looked like she had been accompanied all her life, which was actually true. He advised her not to think about anything and just enjoy life, because the girl definitely loved money, jewelry, power, and strength. Although this was true, Leah resisted the presence of escorts with all her might. She couldn't control herself because the desire for money, jewelry, power, and strength was in the nature of penguins. The hero still insisted on an escort and offered the girl to choose one knight instead of 3. The guy showed excessive concern, which finally got on the girl's nerves. She reminded him that she doesn't like him. His face is just to her taste. The girl became even more frightened when the hero turned everything around, as if she wanted to get his body, like in the morning when she was in his bed. The knights noticed that the girl was the first person, besides the lady, who treated their boss so calmly. Outwardly, it seemed as if these young people had spent at least 10 years together, and not just one day. Leah had already barely gotten rid of her maid in the evening, because someone could have caught her in the form of a penguin. The girl was disappointed and did not understand what to do with this stubborn guy. Suddenly, she noticed a young man chasing a butterfly. She immediately pointed her finger at him and declared that she wanted to make him her escort. Leah realized that the guy looked exactly like the black cow she had heard about from her maid when she was a penguin. The knight did not understand how the girl knew this, but he confirmed her assumption. Leah was delighted and asked the young man to accompany her. The guy was surprised and asked if it would be a problem if he was the one guarding her. However, Leah admitted that she would feel more comfortable around him because he doesn't seem like a rebel. Initially, the girl thought that she was taking a bit of a risk, but she was still happy with what happened. People like him can be fooled even with their eyes closed, and she was very good at that. So she immediately grabbed the guy's hand and admitted that he was the one she needed to take care of her. Leah was sure that the guy wouldn't suspect anything, even if she turned into a penguin. The girl believed that this would definitely help her in her future plans. Only Cyrodiil watched the scene from the side and wondered who this knight was that was making the girl react like that. Already in the girl's room, she officially introduced herself and said that she would be living in this house for some time due to circumstances. Her escort, Hanu, thanked the girl for her trust and promised that he would give his life to protect her. The guy was pleased that the girl treated him so well, but he still asked her to address him more simply. Leah decided to get straight to the point and said that she had a personal request. In fact, Leah chose Hana because when she was in her penguin form, she had a devoted servant, Ipris, who often told stories about her younger twin brother. He was so impudent and annoying that her fists itched every time she saw him. So Leah believed that she could contact Ipris through Hana, and she admitted that she really wants to meet the older sister of her new escort. However, Leah was very surprised when she heard that the guy did not have an older sister. She was very surprised, because the maid and Hanu looked almost identical. When placed side by side, you get a combination of two types of excellent Korean beef. She tried to make the guy remember whether he really didn't have an older sister or whether he was mistaken. Unexpectedly, the young man admitted that he had a sister, but she was younger. However, he was interested in how the girl knew his sister, who was rather stupid and ill-mannered. The guy was very surprised when he heard that the girl had met her before she became human. Leah quickly realized that she had accidentally let it slip, so she immediately grabbed the guy by the arms to distract him. She admitted that she was very nervous and grateful to the lady for her hospitality, but still found herself in a new environment. It would be much easier for her if she knew at least one person nearby. At that moment, Leah tried to think of something sad, so that she would choke back her tears and move the guy to pity. She remembered her father, whom she missed very much and would like to reunite with. The girl herself did not understand what she was doing in this house, because now her father was looking for her all over the city. She was afraid that her father would hate her for becoming human, and she had not yet found a way to cure the plague. As soon as she thought about all this, tears immediately began to flow from her eyes in streams. She needed someone she could trust to tell her news about her father, so she thought of Ipris. Kanu was captivated by her tears and promised that he would bring his sister, even if he had to knock her out and drag her into the house. The young man promised that he would definitely fulfill this request, after which Suradel entered the room. He froze in place when he saw the knight and Leah holding hands opposite each other. The girl herself did not expect the hero to appear at that moment, because she was too carried away by her story. However, Suradel noticed the tears streaming down her face. He became furious and demanded that the knight explain what they were doing here. Leah was unable to clear up the misunderstanding, so she had to go with Suradel, who was in a bad mood. The guy even said that he would have to reconsider his choice of escort, although Leah said that it was a misunderstanding. However, the guy did not understand why the girl refused to go on a date with him if her heart had not yet been given to someone else. He stated that he was not going to stand by and watch her get attacked when she had only recently acquired human form. However, Leah said that in that case, he himself should stop behaving so intrusively and explaining all this as protection. Suddenly, the salesman appeared in the room and asked if the boys were going to buy any outfits. Leah didn't know what to do because her dad's emergency money was bigger than she thought. Now she doesn't have to worry about starving to death if she leaves the killer whales. Moreover, last night the girl secretly picked up the jewelry that Suradel had thrown away. He was worried because he was going to buy her everything she wanted, but then he realized that his attitude was making the girl more ignorant and carefree. Leah immediately changed her mind and agreed with the guy that protection was really important to her because she loved other people's money. Suradel was delighted and allowed her to buy whatever the girl wanted. Then Leah pointed to the two outer hangars and announced that she was going to buy everything in between. She simply loved shopping and was glad that she could buy absolutely anything she liked. The girl decided that she would leave her father's money untouched in case of unforeseen circumstances. Ahead, Leah noticed purebloods from the tower looking for something. In their hands, she saw a drawing of a penguin, in which she recognized herself. Only now did the girl realize that these people were walking around the city and looking for her. The boys were afraid that in a few days, the body of a dead penguin would arrive at the tower if it had been kidnapped by ill-wishers. Some even believed that a madman from the family of killer whales kidnapped the girl because he loved penguins and came to them every day. However, the most convincing story was that the penguin had turned into a human and run away with the money. Leah was scared because she really did turn into a human, took the money and ran away, and now lives in the killer whale's house. Suddenly, Suradel asked if Leah kept a bag of money next to her. The girl was frightened by such a question, because it could mean that the guy suspected something. She was even more excited when she heard that Suradel wanted to talk to her for just a short time. In fact, the guy pointed to a carriage that was heading their way, and had been for quite a long time. Suradel added that this guy doesn't like him, so he needs to be patient for a little while. Leah was glad that the hero didn't burn her, but she was curious about who was approaching them. And soon, a young man of enormous height, excellent build and appearance emerged from the carriage. Only now did the girl realize that in front of her was Theodore, the main character of the novel, and also the successor of the Wolf family, who possessed the greatest power among the wolves. Initially, he had an unapproachable cold character, but after imprinting on the main character, he completely changes and becomes a person who experiences crushing love. The girl was surprised that Cyrodiil was familiar with the main character of the original story. Theodore heard that the penguin that Cyrodiil was tracking had gone missing, so he wanted to know the news. The hero admitted that he was a little busy these days due to the arrival of a precious guest in their family. After this, he demonstrated that the girl next to him was this important guest. Leah became angry when Theodore said that he saw nothing precious in her. The girl knew about his impudence, but she had no idea that the guy was so rude. In fact, he came to ask Cyrodiil if he was taking part in the hunting competition next week. Leah knew that every 5 years there was a hunting competition between the leading families of the continent. This is the event that begins the original novel, and the place where Anna and Theodore first meet. While hunting, the main character finds a wounded young man in the forest. Anna hates the beastman, but she sympathizes with the guy, and she cannot pass by, so they use magic to heal the hero. Thus, Theodore, who fell in love with her at first sight, imprinted himself on her. However, now Anna was busy searching for the missing penguin. The real main character is Roman's favorite student. Even being a penguin, Leah got along well with her. Kind and devoted, Anna will certainly try to find her old friend. So Leah didn't understand what would happen to Theodore if she didn't come and save him in the forest. The girl realized that she had only one way, although she really did not want to use it. Leah apologized in advance for the rudeness of her question, but still asked Theodore if he was one of those people who fell in love quickly. Cyrodiil was surprised by her behavior and tried to stop the girl, but did not have time. Theodore looked at Leah with disgust and declared that all the killer whales were as crazy as Cyrodiil. The girl herself didn't want to ask this. She just thought that she would have to treat him herself and avoid problems. The girl was afraid that the guy might accidentally imprint on her, and her life was already difficult. But if you ignore this fact, she will feel guilty because Anna did not come, because she was looking for a penguin. However, the girl immediately took her words back, because she was not going to tolerate abuse directed at her. Theodore declared that he was determined to get the prize, and would therefore compete with Cyrodiil for it. He added that their family does not need the prize, but it would not hurt to get it just to be on the safe side. Cyrodiil knew very well that the wolf family was ready to give their lives for those on whom they were imprinted. Theodore was angry that the guy had the courage to touch the seal, because it was an incredibly stupid idea, impression. He stated that he would never allow anyone to control his life. However, Leah was disappointed, because she knew from the novel that it was Theodore who circled around the one he was imprinted on the most. However, the girl was surprised when she learned that winning a hunt would reward her with the elixir of life. The elixir could heal most injuries and was excellent at neutralizing poisons, so it was very useful. Leah was delighted, because she decided that with its help, she could get rid of the infectious disease. She was disappointed then, because the wolf family could simply buy such a thing for money. However, Cyrodiil explained that such an elixir is difficult to create and is not for sale, so it will be given away as a special prize. He added that he has no problem with this, because Cyrodiil himself is the manufacturer of this elixir. Only now did Leah understand why Theodore had reacted that way to the killer whale's joke. The young man admitted that due to his busy schedule, he would not be able to take part anyway. The guy admitted that he wanted to see how other animals were going out of their way to get this elixir. He reminded that most people don't like purebred people. It's the same story with their family, because despite their animal side, they were heavily discriminated against. They found the weakness funny, because the killer whales, who were forced to always be near the sea, now lived in the capital. After learning of their magical abilities, the gloating subsided, since a significant part of the continent is controlled by magic. It was the first time Leah had heard that animals discriminated against their own kind, and she understood why her dad had gotten involved with the killer whale family. Her father was once displaced too, until the magic tower gained power. Cyrodiil stated that in order to protect the world, one must be stronger than those who need chaos. He sincerely did not want his family to be ignored in society any longer. Because of the young man's constant smile, Leah didn't even know about his mental trauma. Suddenly, she approached the young man and pulled him by the sleeve. She smiled and declared that everything would always be fine with the killer whale family. After all, they have such a wonderful defender as Cyrodiil, who can handle anything. The girl knew that no one would dare to show disrespect to the family of orcas in front of him, because he was a magician and a swordsman. She realized that with the help of the elixir of life, the main character Theodore could be saved. But her hunting skills aren't enough to win the prize, so she needs to come up with a plan. Cyrodiil asked the girl not to say such sweet words, because if someone else were in his place, he would immediately fall in love with her. The girl admitted that she was attracted to such a fashionable thing and would like to get the elixir of life for herself. However, she was very surprised when the next second the hero handed her this very elixir. Leah doubted that it was possible to give away so easily something that was difficult to make and could not be sold. However, what was impossible for others, Cyrodiil was ready to give to the girl just like that. He admitted that he didn't mind spending it all even on healing her paper cut, because he trusted the girl. Leah asked him not to treat her so well because she could hurt him, but in fact she was worried that all this was because of her lies. The girl was afraid that the guy's opinion would change when he found out her true nature. Cyrodiil saw the strange expression on the heroine's face, so he realized that he needed to come up with something. He offered the girl a deal whereby she would call him by his nickname in exchange for the elixir of life. It seemed to Leah that receiving the elixir for such a simple request seemed somehow unequal. However, she thought it over again and decided that it was a great deal for herself. Therefore, the girl immediately grabbed the elixir and decided that from that moment on, she would call the guy Sue. She saw the guy's strange reaction and reminded him that he himself had just asked to be addressed by his nickname. Then Cyrodiil explained that he had expected to see the girl's sweet refusal and give it away as a precious stone. However, he muttered it so quietly that Leah did not hear anything, demanding that he repeat it again. Cyrodiil decided not to do this and declared that he liked the human Leah more than the penguin Leah. The girl didn't understand why they suddenly started talking about another Leah. She didn't like that the guy swore his love to a penguin, but in the end preferred his own race. She demanded that Cyrodiil no longer talk about the other girl in front of her, causing him to think that she was jealous of the penguin. Leah was confused, but still decided that the guy should think as he saw fit. The hero liked her reaction because he loved teasing the girl and watching her emotions. Soon the boys returned to the mansion that belonged to the killer whales. There they were immediately met by a butler, who asked if they had had a good time. The man added that the head of the family had now returned and invited the heroes to join him for a meal. Leah was a little surprised that she was allowed to attend the family dinner too. However, Cyrodiil stated that the girl was a valuable guest, so her father would definitely be interested in her. Leah suddenly stopped wanting to date him when she found out that her father's character was very similar to that of his son. The girl was very worried about meeting the head of the killer whales and thought that she needed to greet him properly. She didn't want to seem rude, so she decided to change her clothes first. Cyrodiil was struck by her beauty when Leah came out to him in perfect order in a new dress. They both genuinely thought she looked absolutely stunning, but no matter how much the girl wanted to admire herself in the mirror, she realized that she couldn't keep the owner of the house waiting. So, joking, the heroes went to the dining room in the main hall. Bella was already sitting at the table and asked the guys to join them as soon as she saw them. The hero immediately introduced their guest to his father, and Leah bowed her head in greeting. She had heard before from the workers of the magic tower that the head of the killer whale family was the blue whale. Therefore, the girl assumed that the hero's father would have a huge beard. She knew that since ancient times, a huge beard has been a sign of strength and power. Therefore, she was very excited and dreamed of seeing this beautiful beard as soon as possible. However, when the boy's father dabbed his lips with a napkin and removed it, Leah was disappointed. It turned out to be a middle-aged man of pleasant appearance, who was glad to meet the girl. However, Leah didn't hear him at all, because the only thing that worried her now was the lack of a mustache and beard. The girl thought it was like when you take a pie with filling and find that it's empty inside. However, I noticed that the man exuded the same grandeur as the most enormous creature in the world. Leah bowed to Mr. Fremo and formally introduced herself to him. The man then watched as his son helped the girl sit down at the table and courted her. Leah didn't understand why the gentleman was looking at her so intently. Finally, Cyrodiil could not stand it any longer and declared that his father was embarrassing their guest with his intent gaze. Fremo admitted that it was all because it had been 30 years since his wife became the last surviving killer whale. Leah was surprised by this and realized that something had happened in the family, and it was connected with the fact that the number of killer whales was so small. Killer whales are incredibly rare because usually other animals are divided into several families. For example, among the wolves, there is a family of gray and Arctic wolves, and among them, there is the main family of wolf, representing the race. Leah apologized, but immediately asked what happened to the killer whale because she didn't know anything. Bella explained that there were many of them from the very beginning, and before the incident, there were enough killer whales to form a village. But then something happened that could not be forgiven. The woman said that it was all the shark's fault, which terribly scared the heroine. Bella promised that she would tell him about it the next time she had the chance. In the meantime, she asked the girl to beware of sharks, because by their nature, they seek to kill killer whales. Mr. Fremo asked Leah not to worry, because being a killer whale, she too could learn magic and be safe. Outwardly, Leah remained calm and acted as if nothing had happened. But inside, she was worried about the war between the killer whales and the sharks, and the magic that was beyond her control. The girl realized that she would have to escape from this house as soon as possible in order not to die. After finishing the meal, for some reason, the head called Leah alone into his office. He apologized for distracting the girl during her rest. He admitted that he wanted to check something, because from the very first glance, she seemed strange to him. Leah was terrified when her father told her that she was not really a killer whale. The man smiled and realized from the girl's reaction that he had guessed correctly. Leah herself was very scared and did not understand how he found out about it. Then the man explained that killer whales have their own specific hair, and the girl's hairstyle is slightly different from Bella's. It's a small detail, so Bella didn't guess, but he couldn't be fooled, because he loves her so much that he is ready to risk his life. Leah didn't know what to do. She thought about leaving early, but she didn't expect to be caught like this. The man knew that the girl did not know how to turn into an animal, so he explained that there was a drug that could do this forcibly, but it was prohibited. He didn't know what Leah's intentions were, but he felt that she had not deceived them with bad intentions. The girl did not understand why the man spoke to her so politely, although she had deceived their entire family. Suddenly, the man's hand lit up, and he promised that it would all be over soon, and that it wouldn't hurt. At first, Leah was scared, but then she decided to tell him anyway, since he already knew everything. She explained that she had not intended to deceive anyone. The kidnappers themselves mistook her for a killer whale. The man admitted that the situation was not easy, so he promised that he would not reveal the truth until she did so herself. He was very surprised when Leah said that she was actually the penguin that Mr. Roman was looking for. She mentally apologized to her father and apologized again to the head of the Orca house. Now everything became clear to Fremo. He knew about his son's passion for the penguin, but he had a special attitude towards Mr. Roman's penguin. Even though the man said that something interesting had happened for the first time in a long time, Leah believed that he would keep it a secret. The girl was about to leave, but the gentleman, whose voice became more serious, suddenly asked her to stay. Leah was already afraid that he still couldn't forgive her, and would now go and tell everything to his wife. The girl was already mentally imagining how, instead of a steak, the mistress's fork was biting into her own head. However, unexpectedly, the man asked to be called Fremo, and not addressed formally as the head of the house. He also added that he would be simply delighted if she called him father. After this, Leah was horrified by his pressure, because only daughters-in-law can treat someone like that. Meanwhile, Suradel sat in his office and worried about what his father and Leah were talking about. Leah was a little disappointed with what was happening, and did not understand why all the men in this family were so strange. She realized that no one was going to kick her out, so she wanted to rest. After the girl left, the master was surprised, because she was filled with mana, characteristic of Suradel. He was even more amazed by her vessel, because it was difficult for an ordinary person to cope with his son's mana. And there was no limit to this girl's volume. Something was clearly happening between them. Moreover, the man noticed that the girl was not at all afraid of his son. Usually, fear arises from the difference in power between the predator and the prey. That's why the man saw such a calm beast for the first time in front of Suradel, because even his parents didn't get used to him right away. Besides, the man knew that Leah was actually a tiny penguin. He decided that this was due to similar mana, or that the girl simply lacked animal instincts. However, he knew that no matter what the reason, Suradel would not be able to help but be interested in her. The man was sorry that the girl was not a killer whale, but he was glad that an interesting daughter-in-law could appear in the family. Suradel was surprised by such a question, but noted that the girl could very well use magic. At first, Leah herself was surprised, because she had never thought about it before. She didn't know if she had mana like the bloodline or the people from the Orca family. However, the girl did not have time to say anything, because Suradel reminded that magic was within the power of everyone in their family. Leah smiled and said that recently her dream had become to wave a magic wand. However, she was a little upset, because this way she wouldn't know why she had control over magic. Besides, she wanted to find out if the reason for Cyrodiil's interest in her was related to her mana. The young man asked the girl to visit the library the next day, because there was a lot of information about magic there. He added that the doors to any corner of the mansion were open to the girl, and he had urgent business, so he would not join her. Leah was upset when she heard that Cyrodiil was going to join the novel and look for the missing penguin. The girl said that she was just about to practice transforming, so she wished the guys a good search. In fact, Leah was a little worried and did not understand where these emotions came from. Cyrodiil stated that the girl had complete freedom of action, but asked her not to do anything dangerous in his absence. Suddenly, a box appeared in his hands, and he added that he wanted to give the girl something with a large, precious stone. In his arsenal, this was the only ring that could be adjusted in size, and it could also be used to call for help. The young man approached the girl and carefully read the summoning spell into her ear. However, Leah was discouraged by what she would have to say. She stated that she would never in her life use this ring if she needed to say such strange phrases. Cyrodiil agreed and noted that it would be better for him if there was no reason for the call. Why did he get down on one knee and ask Leah, with whom he fell in love at first sight, to be with him? However, the girl thought that these were all jokes, so she was only irritated by his constant quirks. Cyrodiil was a little upset, but he played out a new scene as if he had presented the lute to his master. The girl liked this idea more, and she even praised her subordinate for such a find. Leah looked with delight at her new ring, which, moreover, had also shrunk perfectly in size. Out of gratitude, Cyrodiil declared that he only wanted to touch the girl's forehead. He added that he wanted to take her temperature, because he was worried about her condition. Leah was surprised that the young man was sincerely worried about her, so she took his hand and gently placed it on her own forehead. The young man was embarrassed, because he thought that the girl would blush again and give up on this idea. Leah herself was surprised that the guy was embarrassed, because she thought he was just joking with her. She also added that there was no point in measuring her temperature, since it had been low since birth. Cyrodiil knew this very well, but he simply wanted to stay with her a little longer, because her warmth was pleasant. Leah was angry because the guy was making fun of her again and saying such embarrassing things as if nothing had happened. The next morning, Cyrodiil went to the local magic tower early in the morning. In fact, last night, Leah actually turned into a penguin after she developed a fever, without any hallucinations or fainting, as before. This time, only the truth was revealed. She was still unstable as a human, so when she was ecologically weak, she would turn into a penguin. During the day, Cyrodiil was usually always with her. But at night, when she was completely alone, thoughts about her past life crept into her head. The girl was afraid that she was truly alone, and this was the only way to transform. The next day, Khan returned, carrying a huge sack. The boy threw the bag on the ground and said that he was not sure that he would be able to persuade his sister. That's why he twisted her and stuffed her into a bag against her will, and then brought her to this house. Leah was scared when the bag came undone, and Ipris crawled out. Leah was very worried about her loyal maid, but Hanu asked her not to come closer. The next second, Ipris pounced on her brother for daring to bring her here like that. The girl apologized to the maid because she didn't think that Hanu could go to such extremes. Ipris wanted to finish right then and there, but still decided to ask why the killer whale needed her. She said that if it was not something important, but just like that, then she would better go and look for her mistress. Leah was upset by what happened and asked Hana to leave the room for a minute. Now that there were only two of them left, the girl decided to talk to Ipris. She confessed that she was the penguin everyone was looking for. However, the maid thought that the girl was talking nonsense, so she wanted to leave and never see him again. Leah took her hand and reminded her of what she had told her earlier. She reminded them that they had a secret that only they knew, without their father's knowledge. Ipris once said that if it weren't for money, the child of the tower's archmage would have been long gone. There was no way to know this because the girl was new, but she accidentally broke her father's potion and tore the magic circle. Then the penguin saved her from being fired by pretending that it was all her fault. Since then, Ipris has opened her heart and even revealed her secrets, as the tattoo on her back is actually the name of her ex-boyfriend, which she later covered up. Leah continued to reveal more and more secrets to her maid, and the maid could not listen to her secrets being spilled out. Only after this did the maid come to her senses and realized that it was indeed her mistress standing in front of her. She wanted to gently stroke the girl, but she threw her hand away because Ipris dared to speak to her so coldly. After this, Ipris became convinced that this was indeed her mistress, just in human form. However, she did not understand how the girl became so fragile and tender, because everyone thought that after the transformation, she would become a rough jock. Ipris did not understand why the girl left and did not say anything, because everyone was very worried. At that moment, Hanu burst into the room and heard that Leah was actually a penguin. He explained that the girls had been out for a long time, and he was afraid for their well-being, so he entered without knocking. Leah immediately ordered her bloodthirsty servant to get rid of this impudent fellow who dared to enter her room. After some time, the young man was punished and sat on his knees with his hands raised up. Leah immediately started asking about her father, who was looking for her everywhere. Ipris said that he was in a terrible state, like a corpse, just walking back and forth, because the entire magic tower was in confusion and looking for the young lady. Ipris didn't know what happened and why the girl left, whether she had really been kidnapped by killer whales. However, Leah admitted that she ran away when she suddenly became human and was afraid of disappointing her father. She remained in the house, where everyone mistook her for a killer whale, since she had nowhere to go. Ipris did not understand why the lady thought that she had nowhere to go, since she could return home. However, Leah reminded that her father hated people like her. Ipris tried to convince the girl that her father would never hate her for this, since he already had a lot of animals working for him. However, Leah believed that Ipris was a special case, because she had a special ability to quickly perceive the emotions of others, and she worked as a translator from Penguin. However, the girl was afraid that she herself would be discovered and thrown into prison. Hanu suddenly asked why the girl spoke so well, since she had only recently become human and should be bad at it. Leah didn't understand why everyone around her thought she couldn't speak normally. Ipris noticed that her mistress was a genius, and even in the form of a penguin, her thoughts and actions were on a different level than those of ordinary animals. Leah understood perfectly well that all this was because she was actually a person from another world. She was a little disappointed that she had already been caught by two people, so she would have to be more careful in the future. Kanu asked who the person was who also revealed the girl's identity. Then, Leah said that it was the head of the family who uncovered her and greeted her, allowing her to continue living in the house. Ipris stated that in any case, she would be on the side of the mistress and would find work in this house if the girl stayed. Hanu thanked Leah for talking to his sister, who was currently out of work. Ipris immediately pounced on her brother, because he continued to egg her on. Leah decided that it was probably for the best that Hanu had caught her. Now she knows that she and Ipris are blood relatives, so the maid will not reveal it. She just watched as the brother and sister fought and sorted things out between themselves. Leah knew that with the help of these two, she needed to come up with a plan to save the main character. She knew that he would be in danger at the hunting competition next week. Time passed, and the period of hunting competitions began, although Leah actually hoped that the main character Anna would somehow prove herself. Thanks to Ipris, the girl knew that in fact, Anna was now helping to look for the penguin everywhere. She should think better about hunting competitions now, and Leah had to save Theodore, but she was afraid that he would put a mark on her. She had already prepared all the necessary things and hid them in a bag under their bed. However, the girl was disappointed that she became a penguin again at such a moment. She was afraid that the temporary maid would soon come to wake her up and find her in this state. Just at that moment, there was a knock on her room, and Leah hoped that it would be the head of the house, or Hanu. However, it turned out to be Cyrodiil, who wanted to see the girl before leaving. Leah was terrified because she was told he would be gone for a while. She decided to quickly hide under the bed. When the guy announced that he was entering the room, the girl in the form of a penguin crawled under the bed and hoped that the guy would leave as quickly as possible and she would not have to sit here for long. Cyrodiil was surprised by Leah's absence from the room and decided that she had gone for a morning walk, so he would go after her. After the guy left, the penguin crawled out from under the bed and tried to rest from the emotional shock. She decided that after that, she would go to Cyrodiil and pretend that she really had gone out for a walk. The young man stood outside the door the whole time and was incredibly glad that he had managed to record such a moment in order to return to it later. He didn't expect to see such a precious scene of a penguin trying to hide from him under the bed. If Leah found out, she'd be angry. But he cast a relaxation spell, so she'll forgive him for taking the picture. His beloved penguin was undoubtedly in trouble, although that was part of her charm, Some time after this, Leah returned to human form and went to the hunting competition. Cyrodiil went to the Tower of Magic as usual, and Bella and Fremo were busy preparing for the competition. So the girl decided to use this opportunity to save Theodore. She asked Bella to allow her to go to the water accompanied by her guard. The woman decided that the young killer whale was simply missing the water, so she allowed her to have a little fun. The water zone was at the base of the mountain, where it was safe, but just in case she gave her a flare. In the original story, Theodore was attacked and fired a flare, but someone sabotaged the flare and it never launched. Leah knew it was always best to take as many precautions as possible, so she thanked Bella. After this, Hanu went after his mistress, but asked why his sister had gotten involved with them. Ipris stated that the young lady had entrusted her with this humble mission. The girl immediately handed over a bag of absolutely necessary things so that Leah could get ready. However, both of her companions were surprised when they saw that Leah decided to change clothes. The bag also contained 2 potions that change the color of your hair and eyes for 15 minutes. Based on what Ipris knows about leaving a mark, physical contact with the skin is required for this to happen. Therefore, Leah completely covered the exposed areas of her body, and by changing her hair and eye color, she was prepared for any unforeseen consequences. The girl decided that after such preparation, Theodore would never mark her. If someone marks simply because they were saved, it means that this someone is in love with their savior. She didn't know if she could call him human, since leaving a mark was just a romanticized curse. Kanu asked why his mistress was hiding her face. He didn't believe it right away, when the girl confessed that she wanted to commit a crime. Leah explained that this was all important, because she was actually afraid that someone would fall in love with her at first sight. She stated that from now on, even if Hanu and Ipris had doubts, they should simply follow her orders. Kanu was not yet fully prepared for this, but Ipris made him shut up and sneeze. The guy said that he was here to protect his mistress, so he couldn't hesitate. Leah reminded that she was the most important person in this world and would never do anything that would jeopardize her safety. After this, the girl said that they were going deep into the mountains, where hunting competitions were taking place. Hanu and Ipris were horrified because the girl did not warn them about this. The guard tried to warn her that there were animals the size of houses in this forest, but Leah wasn't worried because he was with her. Khan understood this perfectly well, but he noticed that in this forest, animals appeared completely unexpectedly. It turned out that what jumped out in front of them was not just a beast, but also a demonic monster. Khan immediately ordered the girls to hide behind, promising to protect them. Ipris and Leah took advantage of this and ran away as far as possible from this place. As a knight sworn to protect others, the Khan was especially sensitive to her safety, so he could interfere with the plan. Therefore, she herself had to take such a step when the guy would start fighting and not interfere with her. With Hanu's skills, he would quickly deal with the wild animals, and then they would all be able to meet again. After some time, Leah admitted that she came to this place to save someone. It was a stranger, and he might not need her help, because the story is already different from the original. Perhaps Theodore will not be attacked, because he could deal with the killers on his own. However, at that moment, Ipris noticed that someone was lying nearby under a tree and bleeding. Leah immediately recognized that this was Theodore, whom she had recently seen. The girl said that there is a spell that helps determine whether a person is alive. She used it, and Theodore immediately spat out some more blood, proving that he was alive. However, it was still too early to relax and let down our guard. There was still a risk that a killer or the beast that Hanu had missed might be nearby. What Leah was most afraid of was that Theodore would open his eyes at the most inopportune moment, and she would accidentally expose part of her body and touch him. She didn't know about the other times, but she definitely wasn't going to fall for that today. Ipris didn't know what her mistress's plan was, but she believed that everything was not just like that. Leah has always had a question about stories about characters being possessed. She didn't understand why the main characters didn't reveal their obsession to those who would risk their lives for them. She once believed that if it were her, she would have told everything right away. So the girl plucked up her courage and was going to tell about her true identity as a maid. At the last moment, she fell silent and wondered what other options she had. The girl decided that she shouldn't talk about it yet, so she put on a mask and came out of the bushes. Ipris and Leah agreed that if it became dangerous, the girls would immediately run away. With slow steps, the heroine approached Theodore, who was lying unconscious near a tree. She was surprised that the guy was able to fight off the killers in such a state, since he was clearly also poisoned. Before her reincarnation, Leah spent a lot of time in the hospital, so she thought she was used to the sight of wounded people. However, this wound was simply terrible. It was necessary to use Cyrodiil's elixir quickly. Leah approached the young man and carefully began to pour the elixir onto his wounds. Literally, a couple of moments later, they began to glow brightly and tighten before our eyes. She decided that all that was left to deal with was the poisoning. But suddenly, Theodore came to his senses and grabbed her. The girl was disappointed that the guy was reacting this way to someone who was saving his life. He stated that he did not ask for help, so he was not going to just let anyone touch him. He refused to accept help from a stranger and drink the elixir. Leah was extremely irritated because the guy turned out to be ungrateful, and she prayed for this elixir. She came to this place to save the guy, not to listen to his insults. In the morning, Cyrodiil almost saw her in the form of a penguin in his room. Moreover, the girl had to leave her bodyguard Hana for this guy. She demanded that the arrogant fool immediately drink the antidote she had prepared for him. The girl grabbed him and literally forced him to open his mouth, after which she poured the elixir inside. At first, Theodore tried to cough, but still admitted that he had not just drunk poison. Suddenly, the young man stretched out his hand and grabbed the one who saved him. He pulled the stranger tightly towards himself and pressed him to his chest. He looked confused the moment he looked at the hooded man and asked his name. Leah was terrified because she had just become the object of a cliché and didn't know what to do next. The girl did not want to be marked in this way, but she was saved by Ipris, who jumped out of the bushes. She had an umbrella in her hands, with which she was going to attack the guy who had captured her mistress. Only later, when the boy lost consciousness, the girl saw that she had just hit Theodore from the wolf family. They realized that recently this strange pheromone, the sudden gust of wind, and this look were caused by the mark. Ipris thought it was romantic that the boy was going to leave a mark on his savior. The girl decided to first make sure that he really hadn't left that damn mark on her. Leah hoped that the guy didn't touch her bare skin, so he couldn't leave his mark. Under pressure, Ipris admitted that she learned all this information from her former lover. However, she admitted that she had more than one boyfriend, and no one left a mark on her. Leah trusted this information because Ipris's former lover was the head of the Information Guild. In addition, the maid said that she had heard something from her ex, who worked for the Volkov family. It was said that a family member, who had already placed a mark, would develop a lunar pattern under their collarbone. Ipris was pleased when the lady praised her for giving her more useful information than her brother. The heroine approached Theodore and carefully examined his chest, but did not find the lunar mark anywhere. Ipris was even a little upset, because in fact she wanted to see this love triangle. In her story, two young men were courting a lady who suddenly became human. The first admirer was a young, handsome, rich, and crazy penguin lover, and the second animal is from the wolf family, who marked his savior. However, Leah considered this stupid and demanded that Ipris stop introducing her to anyone. However, the maid did not understand why Leah was refusing Cyrodiil, because even within the whale family, there were rumors that he had his eye on her. Leah admitted that she was only interested in this guy because he thought she was a killer whale. Ipris was sure that the guy would like the lady even more if he knew that she was a penguin, because he simply adores them. However, Leah was afraid that Cyrodiil would definitely hate her for leading him on all this time. She thought it could wait, and as long as she saved Theodore and avoided the mark, that would be enough. Thanks to the signal fire that the girl released, the knights will be able to come and take their master. The girls changed back and reunited with Hanu, who barely fought off the boars. He said that next time, the girl should leave her sister and take him with her instead. He stated that he was very worried when he saw the signal fire while he was looking for his mistress in the forest. However, Leah stated that all this time, the guy was doing what he was supposed to, because he protected her from a wild boar. She praised the young man, and Khan took the bait, forgiving her for running away. The brother and sister were complete opposites, but both were very sweet. And from that moment on, Leah decided to take Hanu's scolding as compliments. The guys finally reached the base camp and saw that there was a commotion there. Upon seeing the girl, Bella immediately rushed towards her and began to examine her from all sides. Leah had never seen the woman so worried, especially when you started asking about the flare gun. The girl realized that they were talking about the flare gun that she had used to give the signal. However, Leah was prudent, so she took Theodore's flare gun, which he was unable to use in the original. Bella felt relieved, because she was afraid that it was Leah who gave the signal in the forest. The girl saw a warm look and a kind tone of voice. Then she realized that the woman was sincerely worried about her. She didn't deceive Bella on purpose. She doubted whether she deserved such kindness. Leah reminded that the woman values her only because she considers her a killer whale, but because of the truth, she will hate her. At this moment, the Khan noticed the girl's strange behavior and asked if she was okay. Leah admitted that she was fine, but only felt chills. These people who had become close to her could now become disillusioned and leave her when her identity was revealed. Leah turned to Bella and asked how long the beastman could remain in human form. The woman said that one can usually stay in this body for about a month, but everything depends on the person. Leah decided not to tell the woman that she had, with great difficulty, turned back into a human this morning. Bella added that the Orlov family would soon hold a banquet to celebrate the succession ceremony. Once everything was over, the woman suggested that the whole family get together and go to the island, which scared the girl. At that moment, Mr. Fremo appeared, who knew the girl's secret, so she hoped for his help. However, he only stated that he would be very happy if Leah joined them. However, Bella forbade him to go, because someone had to stay at home and take care of everything, and he had only recently returned. Leah was irritated by his behavior, because the man promised that he would keep her secret. He promised that he would remain silent until she herself decided to reveal the truth. And now he betrayed her like this. At this moment, Theodore's guards ran into the camp and demanded that a doctor be brought immediately. Everyone immediately saw who was hurt and assumed that he had been ambushed. In addition, everyone noticed that the guy had a huge bump on his forehead. Soon, Leah returned to her place and did not expect that the hunting competition would end like this. Kanu said there was no choice, as the attack that occurred during the competition now had to be investigated. Leah wondered if they found any evidence at the crime scene. There seemed to be no marks, so everyone thought that someone had hit the guy with a large blunt object. Leah was about to leave the room and saw Cyrodiil standing on the threshold. She stated that she definitely did not plan to meet the young man, so she wanted to pass by. The hero was sure that they had a date planned for that day. Kanu was very surprised when he heard that we young people were dating. Cyrodiil extended his hand forward and declared that they even had matching rings. It was only at that moment that Leah realized that the protective ring the guy had given her was a pair. She thought he gave it to her out of concern, not obsession. Cyrodiil stated that they hadn't been spending much time together lately, so the level of Leah in his body had dropped and his overall happiness level had decreased. The guy admitted that it was incredibly difficult for him to even survive to this day. He added that there was some interesting information that might interest the girl. However, he admitted that he would only tell when they were alone. Leah didn't want to let Hana go, but she thought that for the sake of the elixir, it was worth listening, so she simply threw the guy out the door. Cyrodiil admitted that he always wanted to touch the girl's hair because it was rare to find someone with the same hair color as his mother. Leah admitted that she didn't have time to take much care of her hair. Then the hero promised that he would become her personal stylist, because his hands can do a lot. He carefully ran his fingers through the girl's hair. Leah watched him and noticed that Cyrodiil was incredibly gentle and neat, and it was just hair. After a couple of minutes, she saw that her white strands had been twisted into beautiful braids. She thought that, for something like this, she would have to ask a special person. But Cyrodiil was happy to help her. Leah didn't mind, so she asked if the young man would like to braid her hair again tomorrow. Cyrodiil was incredibly happy that he had another reason to be with his favorite penguin. The girl found the expression on the young man's face strange when he looked at her. No matter what she looked like, she began to feel as if Cyrodiil's feelings for her were unchanged. However, the girl thought this was complete nonsense, because as soon as he found out that she was not from the cetacean family, everything would change. She didn't care if everything disappeared in one day, because now she hoped that he would continue to smile, because the girl was sincerely grateful to Cyrodiil for everything he did for her. Sometime after the hunting competition, Leah decided to tell Ipris everything. She told about her reincarnation, and even that she had read a book about this world. After a long explanation, Ipris finally believed her. The girl was interested in absolutely everything, right down to winning tickets for the upcoming lotteries. Ipris admitted that the mistress was unusually smart and incomparable, especially for a penguin. So now everything became clear. Leah thought it was quite strange to realize that the world you lived in was written in a novel. Leah didn't remember which family had attacked Theodore, so Ipris suggested finding a way to avoid the raid on the Orca family's territory. The girl admitted that she would like to check something before that. She explained that she simply had to find out the true nature of Cyrodiil. She confirmed that the events from the hunting competition actually happen in reality. Therefore, the extinction of purebred people seems inevitable, since the plague will also appear. She needed to get more information to prepare. Leah wasn't sure if Cyrodiil's identity had anything to do with it, but the Orca family was rarely mentioned in the novel. She added that she was trying to find out his identity because it was suspicious that with such appearance, the guy was not even a minor character. He was a very capable magician and an excellent fighter, so he had to appear in the novel. However, in history, only humans could use magic, so Leah was going to infiltrate the islands of the Orcas to find out when they started using magic. Ipris was a little upset and assumed that it was Cyrodiil who was in charge of everything. Leah didn't know this. She just wanted to find out, because it was all somehow too suspicious. Ipris admitted that something always bothered her greatly. Even the more formidable beasts at the top of the food chain bow their heads before him. But the gentleman had no effect on the penguin. Leah couldn't believe it, because next to her, Cyrodiil didn't look like a formidable beast, but rather like a cute little animal. Ipris explained that animals instinctively bow down to him, and the very thought of it gives her goosebumps. Even as a penguin, Leah was never afraid of him or any other animal. Ipris suggested that a characteristic feature of penguins is fearlessness. She imagined a huge, menacing penguin that intimidated everyone around him. Mr. Fremo was fascinated by the fact that the girl had mana, so her characteristic must be related to that. Leah decided to find out later, because first she needed to gather more information to prevent the plague and save her father. Ipris promised that she would do everything in her power to help the lady. Since she worked in the tower, she has many pureblood friends that she also wants to save. Leah believed that if they couldn't prevent the plague, they could find someone who could make a cure. She hoped that there was a secret master who was good at healing, had abilities, but was rumored to be crazy or eccentric. Leah believed that finding such a person would be like trying to catch a star. Suddenly, Ipris rose from her seat and declared that she knew this man. In any case, she has a friend who can provide her with such information. Leah immediately realized that the person with the information was her ex. Ipris wanted to justify the trust of her mistress, since she entrusted her secret to her. Just as the penguin had once protected the girl, she wanted to repay her owner. So Ipris hugged the girl and promised that she would definitely protect her. Leah was glad that she already had someone who loved her regardless of her appearance. The girl hugged her maid and declared that reuniting with her was her best decision. Leah and Ipris truly loved each other and believed that everything would be fine for them now. The maid believed that her mistress actually had a certain meticulousness, despite her apparent indifference. Earlier, Leah appeared anxious and kept fiddling with her hands nervously. Ipris was lost in her thoughts and came to her senses only when someone stopped right in front of her and called out. Cyrodiil stated that every day the girl wandered around the city in search of her master, and now she looked much more relaxed, as if she had found what she was looking for. Ipris was frightened, because she didn't even notice when the gentleman managed to appear. The girl asked if the guy had already given up and stopped looking for his favorite penguin. However, Cyrodiil only laughed and said that his beloved penguin was not in any danger at his home. He admitted that he knew Leah's true appearance from the very beginning, because it was obvious to everyone who knew her. Ipris said that she had already resigned from the tower and simply did not go because she was afraid that the lady's identity could be revealed because of her. Cyrodiil promised to sort this out and invited the girl to his house, promising to register her as his personal servant. Ipris was glad to hear this, but she wondered why the master decided to help her. Then the young man smiled and said that Leah would feel more comfortable around her because she seemed very anxious lately. Previously, Ipris felt only fear and horror in front of him. But now, when the guy spoke about the penguin, he turned out to be completely different. Therefore, the girl agreed to this proposal, promising not to say anything about it to her mistress. She didn't understand why the guy thought that she would hide something from the lady. However, he convinced her, noting that it would be very interesting to watch how Leah would react when everything became clear. Ipris decided that all these emotions on the little penguin's face would be incredibly cute. They agreed that if the truth was revealed when she was not around, Cyrodiil would tell her everything and even show her pictures. Leah knew that Ipris's former lover had gone away on purpose to avoid meeting her, so she asked the girl if she had any news from the castle. It was said that Theodore had not left his chambers since the hunting competitions, so there was a high probability that he would not appear at the Orlov family's succession ceremony. Leah didn't know what was happening, because the wound wasn't that serious. Then, Ipris admitted that she had not yet abandoned the idea that came to her mind during the competition. She still dreamed of seeing that famous love triangle with her mistress in the leading role. Kanu was not pleased that Ipris was going to tell this old legend about the animals again. Leah wanted to listen to it, because there was a chance that it was somehow connected to the original story. Ipris added that the legend is widely known among the animals of the continent, according to which the first beastman was a wolf. Once upon a time, there lived a black wolf who fell in love with a man. He made a deal with a demon to become human and be with the girl he loved. The demon granted his wish, and soon it was time to pay his bills. The price was that the feelings the wolf had for his beloved would be passed on to his descendants. This was the real mark that only wolves had when they saw their chosen one. However, the story only spoke of marking, so Leah wondered where the rest of the animals came from. Kanu added that this is precisely what is explained further, because this legend has an unhappy ending. The black wolf and his beloved started their own family and gave birth to a child. However, ordinary people did not accept them and began to mock the baby. Over time, the bullying became worse and worse, and the poor child was driven out of society. And one day, people cruelly killed this child, leaving him lying in the middle of the forest. That day, the black wolf again approached the demon to make another wish. He asked the demon to fill the entire continent with beastmen so that no one would ever poison them again. It was from then on that ordinary animals began to turn into people. Such beastmen cannot maintain their human form for longer than a certain amount of time. The black wolf, who made the deal directly, had the shortest time span among all. The guys wanted to tell the whole story to the end, but it turned out that they had already arrived at the right place. Ipris asked to provide everything to her because she was going to pull the wool over the eyes of the people inside the guild. Khan had to take care of the safety of the lady who went with them. Leah was finally glad to see the information guild where there was a person, Ipris. The guys opened the door and were immediately met by a friendly man inside who was going to serve the visitors. However, he immediately recognized Ipris, who demanded that he take her to Jack immediately. They walked through the workrooms for some time, but then the man declared that no one except Ipris could go further. She stated that things were different before, and she was allowed in with anyone who wanted to. The man admitted that Jack was only expecting Ipris, so everyone else was forbidden entry. However, the guys didn't care, so they went through the underground tunnel straight to the guild headquarters. Leah said that the place looked a little sinister and dangerous. However, the girl added that if something happens, her brother will be able to protect the lady. In fact, Leah had Cyrodiil's ring, and Hanu and Ipris are here, so everything should be fine. Unexpectedly, Kanu jumped forward and blocked his opponent's blow. Leah could not believe that she almost died, and Ipris at this time was already near her mistress and calming her down. The man reminded that this was precisely why the others were denied entry. He told the guard that all these people were going with Ipris, so they should be let through. The girl was furious because no one warned them that they were going to be attacked, so the lady could get hurt. The man was surprised that there was a noble person there because he had not been warned about this. Leah dreamed of seeing that very man as soon as possible because she thought that he would be big and impressive. Soon, the whole company approached the doors at the end of the tunnel, behind which the head of the guild was supposed to be waiting for them. The doors opened, and a handsome young man asked if he looked well enough to meet the company. He couldn't decide what expression to make or where to sit to look cooler. The young man discussed this with his subordinates and did not notice that he was being watched. Even the guys agreed that the guy looked okay, but it was a bit of a shame because Ipris deserved better. The girl got tired of enduring it and loudly called her ex, which attracted his attention. The guy immediately dropped what he was doing and ran up to his beloved, who had come to visit him. Ipris was furious because the lady almost got hurt while burying him. She stated that she had not come here to talk, but simply to make sure that Jack did his job. She stated that her mistress was his client, and Leah noted that Jack couldn't even say a word to his ex-girlfriend. The guy admitted that after the penguin went missing, Ipris suddenly sent him an exciting letter, so he did everything he could to find this penguin. Hopefully his beloved would forgive him. However, suddenly the girl stopped looking for the penguin and began spending time with this killer whale. The heroine realized that the head of the Information Guild was too obsessed with Ipris to notice that she was a penguin. Leah realized that in fact, the young man was insanely jealous of the girl towards the others. So she hugged the maid and asked which of the two she would choose, knowing the answer in advance. Jack reminded her that Ipris had promised to marry him, so she couldn't choose someone she'd known for less than 2 weeks without even thinking. Ipris reminded him that she had not come here to listen to his whining, but to give him work. Leah had never seen the maid in such a state, and realized that she was still hurt by what Jack had done. The guy promised to provide all the information that the Lich is looking for, but guild policy requires a one-on-one conversation with the client. Ipris did not want to agree, but Leah promised to take revenge if anything happened to her. The maid was happy about this, but still promised that they would completely wipe the guild off the face of the earth if even one hair fell from her mistress's head. After all the extra people left, Jack's assistant began casting soundproof spells so that he could speak freely. Leah didn't understand what could be said that would make such a spell necessary. After that, she walked further and entered the personal office of the guild leader. And on the way, she looked around. Leah noticed that the atmosphere changed dramatically when they were alone, and she was unable to call for help. However, she did not expect at all that the next moment Jack would beg her to help him and Ipris get back together. Leah didn't understand why she was needed, because if Jack wanted to return Ipris, then he had to talk to her himself. Ipris only wanted Jack's trust. She was serious, even preparing to marry him. However, Jack hid his biological species and continued to lie about it, and the girl could not stand it anymore and left. The guy explained that he hid it because he knew that Ipris would dump him if he told her, since he was the complete opposite of her type. He explained that Ipris's ideal was someone with a deep, unreadable gaze, with huge hands that could withstand the cold. He added that his appearance was useful in managing the information guild, and he never went against his nature. Only after these words did Leah realize what this Jack could really be. She guessed that since the guy was good at collecting information, he was a rodent. Jack realized that he had nothing to hide, so he admitted that he was actually a field mouse. Leah advised him to just go and confess to his beloved who he was. The guy dated her for so long and didn't realize that the girl liked everything very cute. She reminded that even the penguin the girl was guarding was incredibly cute. Jack remembered that Ipris never liked small animals. When they saw one, she couldn't even look at it. Leah explained that Ipris didn't pet them because she was afraid of crushing them with her strength, and she deliberately turned away because she was too excited by their cuteness. The girl was sure that the maid would like Jack's animal form, even if she didn't particularly like him in human form. She promised that she would persuade Ipris to at least listen to him, in exchange for which the guy would take on her request. He promised that if he could really talk to Ipris again, he would tell the girl everything she wanted to know. Leah asked to find someone who could create a cure for the epidemic, because there was little time left. Jack admitted that there was one person who was ideally suited to make the medicine, because he knew alchemy. It was a raccoon who was known for his abilities in alchemy, but suddenly his entire family abandoned everything and disappeared. Jack reported that they suddenly packed up and went into the territory of the whale family. Leah knew that most animals live where they are most comfortable, that is, in their natural habitat, but she didn't understand why raccoons would go to an island in the middle of the ocean. Now that Jack had given her a map to the raccoon's location, she had another reason to go to that stupid island. After some of his work was done, it was time for the reward. Ipris and Hanu stood behind the door and waited for their mistress to appear. Leah immediately asked the girl for a favor, so that she could at least listen to what Jack was going to tell her. Ipris was irritated, but the guy said that it would only take a minute of her time. The maid sighed and agreed to listen only because the guy had been helping her lately. Without further ado, Jack took a deep breath and transformed into his true form as a little field mouse. Leah explained that he hid his identity because he was afraid that the girl did not like small animals and would leave him. Ipris immediately turned away and said that she would give the guy a chance if he really liked her and wanted to win her over. Jack was overjoyed, and Ipris tried her best to contain her emotion, turning away so that no one would notice her face. A few days later, on the night before Orlova's banquet, a disaster occurred in Leah's room. The girl tried to let her hair down, but it had become terribly tangled over the past few days. Previously, Cyrodiil was her personal stylist, but the girl had not seen him for a long time, so she went out into the corridor for help. She was surprised to see the young man in the middle of the night, looking so strange. Cyrodiil explained that he was heading to the wolf family to cast a healing spell on Theodore. Leah was surprised, because she thought that the guy's wounds should have healed by now. However, what the girl wanted most now was for the guy to take responsibility right before he left. Cyrodiil was confused, and only later realized that Leah was talking about her hair. The girl began to go down to him, because she did not want to shout her request throughout the house. At the very middle of the stairs, she tripped and would have fallen if Cyrodiil had not caught her in his arms at the last moment. The young man asked the girl to be careful, because next time she might get hurt. When Leah was a penguin, she had a lot of fat in her body, so it didn't hurt when she fell. Therefore, the girl is not used to the fact that she needs to be careful of her clumsiness and watch her steps carefully. She already wanted to move away from Cyrodiil, but the guy was not going to let her go. He wasn't even scared when the girl threatened to bite him as punishment. In fact, the young man enjoyed watching the little penguin display his energy. Leah soon got tired of this and asked the guy to let her go, because her hair was really tangled. She tried to comb out the mats, but ended up making them even more tangled. Normally, she might have asked the maid to help her, but now she had no helpers. Leah was very surprised when she heard that Cyrodiil had a candidate, Ipris, who worked in the magic tower, but then joined his family. He heard that she was Hanu's new sister, so it would be pretty easy to get close to her. Leah realized that all of this was true, and this was just an amazing opportunity. Leah pretended that she was not very interested, but still agreed to her candidacy. Cyrodiil promised to arrange everything and send a message in the morning so that the maid would be in the house tomorrow. Leah tried to be calm, but inside she was happy, because now, even in the Kitov family, she would be able to be with Ipris. After some time, Cyrodiil was finally able to untie the girl's hair and carefully touched it with his lips. He noticed that the girl smelled wonderful, although Leah herself did not feel anything like that. Cyrodiil said that after tomorrow's banquet, he would immediately go to the island. But before that, he would give the girl a gift. Leah was delighted with the gift, but she knew that to get to the Orlov family banquet, one had to be either the head of the family or the heir. As soon as she thought about being left here alone, she felt somehow lonely. However, the next morning at breakfast, she learned that she also had to attend the Orlov family banquet. She had not been formally introduced, as befits a hunting competition, so Bella suggested going this time as the Dame of Cyrodiil. Leah knew that if she went, she would surely be able to see her father, who periodically attends such meetings. That's why the girl was happy, because it would be nice to both receive a gift and meet her father. The head of the family and Cyrodiil were excited, because they both wanted to dance with the girl at the event. If Bella had known that the girl would agree with such enthusiasm, she would have suggested it earlier. She wasn't sure, but she ordered her dress just in case, so she would have a busy schedule. Leah was scared because it was the first time she had seen Bella so frightening. Soon the whole image was ready, and Cyrodiil and Leah went to the banquet. To get here, the girl had to go through all the circles of hell of preparation. She had been so busy that she had not even received her gift from Cyrodiil, but now she was trying to find her father among the crowd. She told her companion that she was just in such a crowded place for the first time, so she was being considered. Leah thought that her father was desperately looking for her, which is why he was unable to come to the banquet. She wanted to leave a letter, but her father would probably cast a spell on her, so she came up with another plan. Suddenly, among the crowd, the girl saw a dark figure moving towards them. She didn't understand why Theodore had that look on his face, or why he was even here. The girl was scared when the guy approached her, and literally hung over her with his huge figure. She was afraid that he had managed to find out something about the situation at the hunting competition and had now come for her soul. However, she quickly realized that Theodore had actually approached Cyrodiil, and not her. The boys just looked at each other for a while, after which Theodore cursed and walked back. At first, Cyrodiil and Leah simply silently looked after the young man. The girl couldn't believe what had just happened, but Cyrodiil just laughed. Leah didn't understand why the guy wasn't angry, because the heir of another family insulted him and simply left. However, Cyrodiil noticed that he didn't care at all about the anger of some little ant who looked at him the wrong way. He also added that just yesterday he had used healing magic on the guy and had even initially received his consent to do so. Leah thought deeply, but still did not understand why he was acting so strangely. Meanwhile, the main character himself was furious that he could have accidentally marked Cyrodiil. When the boy came to heal him with magic last night, a sweet scent trailed behind him. Moreover, he remembered that the ring had definitely been on him during the hunting competition. Theodore knew that on the day of the hunting competition, for the first time, the mark did not look like a curse. On the contrary, he realized that he had been waiting for this moment his whole life. If this feeling did not leave him, then he was ready to sell his soul to the demon. Before the boy could figure out who he had left the mark on, he lost consciousness, and when he came to his senses, he naturally assumed that the mark had been placed, but there was no crescent-shaped mark anywhere. For the mark to be made, both conditions must be met. But while there was visual contact, there was no physical contact, so the process did not go to the end. Because of this, the boy suffered from a terrible fever after the hunting competition, so Cyrodiil cast a temporary healing spell on him. However, until the process of leaving the mark is completed, the guy will not be able to get rid of this fever. Theodore returned home and immediately asked his mother to immediately stop searching for the person he had marked. The woman did not understand the meaning of this request, because if her son did not complete the mark, he would put his life at risk. She knew that the boy had always resisted the mark. She hoped that, having fallen ill, he would finally change his mind. Based on his behavior, the woman could only conclude that there was no point in trying to persuade the guy any further. That's why she was going to look for the marked person in secret from him. Meanwhile, at the banquet, Cyrodiil stepped away for a while, and Leah thought about what to do. At that moment, Bella noticed the girl and asked her to come to her for a moment. She brought the girl to her friends and introduced her as the one who was now under the care of their family. Ladies of high society noticed that the girl, whom the family returned to the outskirts of the hunting competition, looked like a killer whale. They added that Bella should be happy because her species is growing in number. Leah was scared because the woman decided to introduce her to a lady from the most influential families. The women were delighted to meet someone with Bella's hair color for the first time in a long time. She reminded that her son was indeed somewhat different from ordinary animals, which confused the lady. The women did not stand on ceremony at all, and asked directly whether Bella was going to cross her son with this child. However, the woman only laughed and noted that Cyrodiil was not at all interested in marriage. Besides, there was no benefit from their union. She announced that she would support Leah's choice with all her might, no matter who her partner was. After this, the ladies immediately began to introduce the girl to their own sons, hoping to become related to such an educational family. Bella thanked them for the offer, but reminded them that the girl still lacked experience in the transition between human and animal forms, so it would be better for her to wait with contacts with other families. The women were a little confused, because the transition between human and animal forms is directly related to the lifespan of the beast man. A werewolf's body remains in the form it died in after death. In other words, if a beastman dies while still an animal, it will be impossible to identify his body. This led to many accidents among werewolves in the form of a beast. Sometimes they were even hunted. That's why the woman backed down when Bella admitted that Leah wasn't very good at transforming yet. After leaving, the girl only sighed calmly. Glad that this performance was over, Bella praised the girl for how well she did, allowing her to have a little fun. Leah thought she could finally rest, but those women were just the beginning. Soon a young man approached her and tried to invite her to dance. However, Leah stated that Cyrodiil was her partner, so it would be rude to dance with someone else. Then the next young man came up and again tried to take her out of the room and talk to her alone. However, as soon as Cyrodiil's name was mentioned, the guy immediately came up with a reason and left. Several more young men approached, and Leah continued to mention Cyrodiil in order to brush them off. It seemed strange to her that the guy scared them so much, but they still waited for contact with his family. She wondered what Cyrodiil usually did to cause such reactions. The girl saw her partner with a woman, but did not understand why there was such a tense atmosphere around them. Cyrodiil noticed that the girl in front of him looked like a little hare in front of a starving lion. So he declined the offer to dance, because he didn't really like spending time with people who were afraid of him. Leah eavesdropped and learned that the guy liked confident penguins the most. However, the stranger did not want to give up, and said that the guy was simply spreading ridiculous rumors because he did not want attention from women. Cyrodiil was very angry when she said that such a handsome man like him simply could not like ugly penguins. However, the guy didn't have time to answer, because Leah appeared right in front of him, and she didn't like that the girl continued to impose herself on someone who was clearly not interested in her. She walked up to the girl and asked her directly why she continued to insist even after she refused. The stranger was surprised and decided that Leah was interfering in something that was none of her business. However, Leah pointed her finger at the guy and stated that she couldn't help but interfere, since Cyrodiil was her partner. So she extended her hand to the young man and invited him to leave this place. She thought that Cyrodiil would play along with her, but the young man looked very cheerful as he pressed the girl to himself. The stranger just stood and watched the picture that unfolded right before her eyes. She was embarrassed when the boys started arguing because Leah had spent the previous night in Cyrodiil's bed. The heroine got angry because the stranger misunderstood the young man's words and ran away. However, the guy asked not to worry because his real type is penguins. Leah was surprised and confused, but she didn't understand why the young man was telling her about this now. After some time, the banquet ended, and Leah went home, where she could finally have a good rest. She remembered that Cyrodiil had promised her 2 gifts, one of which was right in her room. The girl was very interested in what the young man could prepare for her. She opened the door to the room and saw that Ipris was waiting for her there, who announced that from today on, she would be her personal maid. Leah was so happy that she immediately looked back into the girl's arms. She was glad that her old friend had appeared, because she was just about to look for her. She wanted to learn about the methods of turning them into an animal, because she needed to go to the islands of the killer whales, but she was afraid of turning into a penguin in front of everyone. Ipris stated that the transformation from animal to human and back is not that difficult, but it can be difficult to explain. She noted that it was as difficult to explain as it was to explain the principle by which a person breathes. She added that for werewolves, turning into animals and back is as natural as breathing, so it's difficult to explain. She didn't know if it would help, but she still prepared something for her mistress. Ipris walked up to a huge sack that lay nearby and began to untie it. Afterwards, she poured out a whole mountain of multicolored precious stones, which Leah was delighted with. Ipris knew that the lady liked to sit on the rocks in the form of a penguin, so she thought that this could help her turn into an animal. Leah was incredibly happy and grateful, so she hugged her old friend again. The girl went to get the basket so that no one would accidentally take the stones, and the heroine stayed near her stones. Since Ipris compared it to breathing, the girl assumed that if she transformed at least once, then everything would become much easier. She tried to concentrate, but only became exhausted. Although before she had transformed perfectly when she cried alone at night, Leah hugged her favorite stones and asked them to be patient for a little while, because soon she would sit on them in all her penguin glory. Before the girl had time to come to her senses, the next moment she had already turned into a penguin and fallen out of her dress. Leah heard a noise outside the door and decided that it was Ipris returning, so she sat down on a pile of stones to please her with her transformation. However, instead of Ipris, Cyrodiil entered the room, wanting to know if the girl had already received her gift. Cyrodiil and Leah froze, silently looking at each other, not knowing what to say. They stood like that for a while, after which Cyrodiil wished the girl a good time and simply left, closing the door behind him. After he left, Leah was in a panic, because she was afraid that the guy would guess that this was her in her true form. Suddenly, the guy opened the door and looked into the room again, apologizing for disturbing him, and said that he had forgotten something there. The young man returned to record the girl's reaction to the stone for Ipris, after which he was about to leave again. After this, Leah could no longer sit still and pounced on the young man, squealing menacingly at him. She didn't understand why the guy was holding some crystal in his hands so calmly. Cyrodiil guessed that the girl was asking why he was not surprised to see her in the form of a penguin. However, the young man picked up the girl in his arms and admitted that he knew from the very beginning that it was her. Leah didn't understand why the guy knew she was a penguin and didn't say anything about it. The hero understood from the expression on her face what he wanted to know, so he admitted that it amused him. She realized that all this time, Cyrodiil had simply been watching her. It was funny to watch her try not to get caught in front of him and the others. The girl was angry that Cyrodiil simply laughed at her, so she began to attack the young man. However, the young man only laughed and noted that they were seeing each other only for the second time, and she was already reaching out to him for a kiss. Leah was furious that he was pretending and teasing her again. At that moment, Ipris returned to the room, and Leah hoped that the girl would help her deal with this vile pretender. However, in reality, Ipris was only worried because she missed the moment when Leah found out about everything. Cyrodiil reported that he had managed to take a photo of the penguin's funny face, which was now standing and cursing at its servant. Unexpectedly, the young man noticed that the girl had turned into a penguin of her own free will. He added that in that case, when she wants to return to her previous shape, she will have to do it herself. Leah was scared because she believed that over time, she would automatically return to human form. Tomorrow they were supposed to go to the Whale Islands with Bella. If a woman finds out about this, she will feel betrayed, because she was delighted to meet the killer whale. However, now that she knows Leah's true form, she may come to hate the girl. The penguin was scared, because the heroine did not understand that everything had come to an end. Cyrodiil understood what the girl was worried about, and guessed that she was worried about her mother. Leah believed that if she couldn't bring a new killer whale into their family in the future, her mother would consider her worthless. However, at the same time, the girl knew that the Bella she knew was not like that at all. Cyrodiil reminded that he, too, is part of the cetacean family, so there were ways to solve their species' problems. However, the girl did not understand why the guy was treating her as if she was the last hope of his species. Ipris asked the girl to stop being sad and just return to human form, because she only needed to remember the sensations during the transformation, and there would be no problems. Leah knew that if she wanted to save her from her father, she had to meet that strange man on the islands. However, after a huge amount of time, the girl had already tried everything, but she still couldn't come back. Ipris stated that there was one option to forcibly return to human form. Leah was inspired and did not understand why the maid had not told her about this before. However, she was displeased when Ipris added that to do this she needed to kiss Cyrodiil. The girl explained that while they are humans in animal form, they cannot reproduce, so when an intimate connection occurs between them, they become humans. Leah believed this explanation and hoped that a simple kiss would be enough. She remembered that her dad kissed her every night before going to bed. Ipris believed that not every kiss would work, but she felt that if she did it with Cyrodiil, the chances of success would increase. She added that romantic feelings are important in this matter, and Cyrodiil is already ready. Leah was unhappy and was amazed that the young man was ready to kiss an animal. However, he was only joking, because if he and the girl kissed, it would be funny, but it was unlikely that the kiss would return her to human form. He admitted that he really liked Leah, but he couldn't get any further when they talked about penguins. Ipris was a little embarrassed by this, and asked to call her when it was all over. Cyrodiil was not one to express his feelings in public. Leah was unhappy that the two were discussing her kiss, as if it didn't concern her. The young man noticed that it was already late, so if the girl didn't become human tomorrow, he would have to come up with something. However, the next morning, Leah had not returned to her normal form, so they called Hana for help. At some point, Cyrodiil simply suggested telling his mother who the girl really was. However, Leah didn't want to, because she wanted to offer the woman a sincere apology. Ipris suggested saying that it would be better to postpone the meeting because the girl was not feeling well. However, Kanu stated that in this form, the woman might want to visit her protégé. They didn't know why, but Leah was serious about getting to the family islands. Cyrodiil explained that preparing for the trip would take some time, so he promised to stretch it out and find another way out. On the other hand, the penguin could still try to kiss him. Cyrodiil wrapped the penguin in a blanket and moved with the help of magic to the mansion, but on the way he met his mother. He admitted that the girl was tired after the previous evening and was still sleeping, so he hid her and was carrying her like that. Leah was afraid that they had been discovered, but her mother decided not to unfold the blanket. She only asked to open it a little so that the girl would not suffocate on the threshold. However, Cyrodiil noticed that then the light would get in and wake the girl up. Bella could understand Leah's feelings, but she asked Cyrodiil to be more careful with her. She asked him not to behave thoughtlessly, as he could hurt people somewhere. Cyrodiil was very surprised when he realized that his mother thought he was just joking. Bella knew that Leah had always been like this since she came to their house, but his intentions remained questionable. She didn't know what the guy was planning, but if Leah got hurt, it could be a problem. However, the guy asked his mother not to worry about this, because he was always sincere with the girl. Bella sighed and decided that the young man would sort out the feelings he was talking about himself. After that, everyone arrived at the square and entered the circle of the teleportation engine to the island. The young man snapped his fingers, and in the blink of an eye, the entire company disappeared into thin air. Lee found the magical world so difficult to understand. Even with the help of the teleportation gate, preparation took several hours. She didn't understand how it was possible to travel long distances so quickly and easily. Cyrodiil joked that if the girl married him, she would never walk further than 100 steps from her bed. He even promised to personally ensure that she soaked in water for the rest of her days, and to make her an iceberg out of precious stones. After this, Leah became inspired and decided that a marriage of convenience was not such a bad idea. Soon the boys reached the right place, and Cyrodiil put the girl on the floor. The young man heard that his mother was going to give the girl a tour of the castle. Thanks to Ipris, who translated the penguin's words, everyone learned that the young lady was ready to choose a kiss. The maid was delighted, because this was the most radical plan, but it was their last hope. Cyrodiil asked the girl to calm down and hoped that she would not force anyone to kiss her. Ipris apologized to those present, as she was simply looking forward to the young lady's first kiss. Cyrodiil admitted that he did not want to take advantage of the situation, but if she needed him, the girl could always let him know about it. Leah noticed that the guy was so careful with her, but for some reason, she still hated him. The girl decided that she would simply close her eyes, and if her beak touched his lips might get hurt. Cyrodiil noticed that the girl was having a hard time making a decision, so he suggested that they decide on rock, paper, scissors. The guys did just that, and it turned out that Leah lost to him. Cyrodiil was delighted with his victory and said that now the girl would have to come to terms with the result. However, the penguin was disappointed because her flippers could only show paper, and Cyrodiil promised not to take advantage of the situation. Kanu grabbed his sister and dragged her out the door, although Ipris dreamed of seeing her mistress's first kiss. The young man sat down next to the girl on the bed and apologized for his joke. She was a little annoyed by this, but she couldn't transform on her own, although she should be in human form. So the girl decided to close her eyes and just do it in such a way that it would hurt the guy. She waited until the young man was distracted and pecked him on the cheek with all her might. Although there was no chance that this method would work, at that very moment, Leah turned back into a human. The girl prepared a cloak in advance to hide her nakedness after the transformation. She noticed that if this method worked, it meant that the young man really liked her. In fact, Cyrodiil knew that this was so, because this was the first time he met someone who was not afraid of him, so he felt special. The girl was interested in what they were taking out of his pocket and why he was avoiding her gaze. Unexpectedly, at that very moment, Cyrodiil's mother entered the room because she wanted to show the girl their house. However, she saw Leah, who had just transformed and had not yet had time to dress properly, sitting on her son's lap. Plus to all this, the young people were also on the bed. Leah tried to explain that it was not what it seemed, but Cyrodiil asked not to interfere with them enjoying their personal time. Bella was taken aback and apologized for entering without knocking, promising to talk to her son in private later. After she left, Leah began to beat the guy, because of him, even more misunderstandings arose. The girl tried to get off the young man's lap because she wanted to explain this to the woman. However, Cyrodiil did not let go of the girl, but instead only pressed her closer to himself and asked her to wait a little. Leah was incredibly confused by the situation and thought the guy had gone crazy. At one point, Cyrodiil suggested closing her eyes so that the girl could leave her cloak on the bed. However, Leah resisted and did not even agree to just sit in his arms for a couple of minutes. She stated that she needed to get dressed and go straight to his mother. Then the guy could just teleport to his quarters. Cyrodiil was very surprised by this proposal because he was so excited that he simply forgot about it. The next second, the young man snapped his fingers and simply disappeared from the girl's room. Soon Leah changed her clothes, but when she came to Lady Bella's room, she was told that she was now talking with her son. The girl hoped that he had managed to clear up the misunderstanding, but she didn't know if she could come in right now. As soon as Leah saw Bella, she realized that the misunderstanding was not yet resolved. The girl decided not to remain silent and to quickly resolve this misunderstanding. Suddenly, the lady grabbed the girl by the hands and apologized for not realizing it right away. She knew that the children were at that age now, and she shouldn't interfere in their personal lives. However, they had known each other for less than a month, and the girl had only recently become human, so she was still a little angry. Madame knew that it was not Leah's fault, because she was simply outraged by her own son's insolence. The girl didn't know if her mother had heard the words that there was nothing between her and the guy. She didn't know how to explain what had happened to her, because she was no longer angry with the women. Leah only explained that there was absolutely nothing between them, and her mother was glad to hear this. Just at this moment, Cyrodiil appeared, having just come out of the shower. The guy admitted that he decided to take a shower because he suddenly felt very hot. Leah wanted to tell the young man something, so Bella was about to leave and asked her son to come to her later. After the woman left, Leah explained that she had managed to clarify the main incident, so Cyrodiil should also explain everything. The young man was a little upset that Leah told his mother that they were not dating. In addition, the girl said that she came to his room because she wanted to ask him to send a letter. What she really wanted was to at least let her father know that she was alive at all. Leah noticed that the guy was a little strange today, but attributed it to the hot weather. She handed him a letter that she had written with the help of her maid. In the letter, she said that she was eating, sleeping, and that everything was fine, which confused the guy a little. It was better than if a man searched for his daughter endlessly, not even knowing if she was alive. Leah explained that she needed the guy so that her father would not try to track the letter. In this way, she wanted to ask the young man for help with his magic. If he were to perform the same large-scale teleportation he did recently, he might be able to avoid being tracked. The young man asked the girl not to worry and promised that he would secretly deliver the letter when the man was not there. Moreover, he said that he was ready to give the girl his second gift right now. She once told him that she dreamed of waving a magic wand. Therefore, Suradel made one such staff with his own hands and gave it to the girl. Leah was surprised, because then she just blurted out something by accident, so as not to reveal that she was actually a penguin. And the guy remembered and did it for her. She was confused and did not understand why the young man was trying so hard for her. She was grateful, but she was still a penguin, so she didn't see the point in magic jelly if she couldn't use magic. The girl felt as if she had made the young man work in vain. However, Suradel reminded that the girl had once asked him about this, and he had told her that she could indeed use magic. Leah was surprised, because she thought it was just a joke and didn't believe it. The guy kept silent then because he mistook her for a killer whale, but he really believed that she could use magic. Leah was inspired by these words and was glad that she would finally be able to do something useful. A little later, in the magic tower, the girl's father was furious when he received the letter. He crumpled the paper and couldn't understand how someone dared to take his daughter. The man called his assistant and ordered him to tell all the magicians to stop searching for the penguin. If whoever was able to contact him without leaving a trace decided to steal the penguin, then it would be impossible to find her with a simple search. The men had no idea why they had taken his daughter, but he promised to wipe them all out as soon as he found out. The girl found it funny that the young man's father insisted that she talk to him about mana. Technically, it was all because of the great love the head of the house had for his wife. Suradel explained that the girl had a huge supply of mana, but its nature was even more amazing. The killer whale race is endowed with a special gift, and they can use mana from the air. This feature was discovered about 20 years ago, and they said that other methods exist. Pure-blooded werewolves generated mana on their own within their bodies, but this did not apply to the girl. However, it seemed that her racial characteristic was the ability to store mana in her body. Suradel explained that the girl accumulated mana because she came into contact with a person with a lot of mana every day. The girl actually remembered that she had grown up in a magic tower her whole life. Even though she had mana, in order to use magic, she had to memorize magic circles, formulas, and spells. However, Leah remembered that the guy used magic by simply snapping his fingers, without any additional things. Suradel explained this topic, that he was simply a genius, after which the girl gave in. She wasn't very good at calculations, and if her racial trait was only to store mana, then no one knew when it would run out. Suradel asked the girl not to worry about it, because her mana reserves were much greater than anyone else's. Besides, if her mana ever ran out, he could always replenish it for her. It was even disgusting for Leah to hear that his mana was in her body. The guy thought it was a waste of energy, because she could have achieved a lot if she had succeeded at least a little. However, Leah reminded him that the penguin she respected most had one special motto in life. The girl agreed with him, and also believed that having fun was the best thing. Suradel wanted to know who the mysterious penguin was, but Leah could not explain to him that it was a character from her real life. In fact, the guy knew that the girl would react this way, so he made her a magic wand. The original purpose of a magic wand is to help you use magic more consistently. However, he engraved several spells on this one, so the girl will be able to use them just by putting out mana. It wasn't difficult to handle, so even Leah should be able to do it. While the girl was in a good mood, Suradel got her permission to help her with her hair. Leah couldn't believe that she could actually use magic. She didn't ask, because so much had happened since Suradel found out she was a penguin, but it didn't really bother him that she kept it from him. So the girl asked the guy why he didn't say anything, even though he knew she was pretending to be a killer whale. The guy liked her when she was a penguin, but now he became even happier when she took on human form. Suradel also knew that she was not pretending to be a killer whale on purpose. He also added that he didn't say anything simply because it was more fun that way. He really wanted to see her reaction when she found out everything, because her face was priceless then. Then the girl asked whether the guy was at least surprised to see her like that. Suradel admitted that he really didn't expect to see her so suddenly in the form of a penguin, so he decided to close the door and leave. He thought it would be a good idea to pretend he hadn't noticed her secret. In any case, he knew that Leah would never do anything bad to him, because he trusted her. The girl realized that the young man always said embarrassing things to her very easily. Suddenly, she noticed that the young man's hair was even softer than her own. So she asked the boy to tilt his head and gently reached out to stroke his hair. Leah admitted that she wanted to stroke his hair and was surprised that it was slightly wavy. They smelled incredibly nice, and this fresh, clean aroma reminded her of the cool sea. While the girl was sniffing the young man's hair, Cyrodiil himself was very embarrassed by her actions. Eventually, Leah pulled away and admitted that she really liked the way he smelled. The young man apologized to the girl for having to leave first, because he had made his mother wait too long. The guy used teleportation and disappeared. Leah was upset, because she wanted to pet him a little more. In fact, the young man teleported to his room and sat on the floor, pressing his back against the door. When Leah turned into a human after kissing a guy, he was at first confused. His brain denied it, believed that he couldn't like someone, tried to find other excuses, and tried to be indifferent to her. The guy sincerely believed that his infatuation with the penguin was only temporary and that he was doing it as a joke. However, now, as the girl stroked his hair, he really thought his heart would explode. And now Cyrodiil realized that he liked the girl in a romantic sense. Bella demanded that the guy stop immediately if he was not serious, because she would not allow him to treat the girl so frivolously. Cyrodiil didn't understand why his mother thought he was just playing with her, and thought it had something to do with who he really was. Bella knew he wasn't that kind of person, but she was afraid that Leah might actually get hurt because of his little whim. Cyrodiil tried to convince the woman that she had nothing to worry about. He admitted that he sincerely loved the girl and did not wish her harm, which surprised Bella. The young man looked the woman in the eyes and admitted that this was not a temporary whim. Even if Leah pushes him away, he will never push her away in return. If you think about it, it was always natural for him to love her, because Leah is the same penguin who previously lived with Roman, the owner of the magic tower. Bella was very surprised when she found out that the girl was actually a penguin. She knew very well what this penguin from the tower meant to Cyrodiil, who was feared by all animals and even purebred people. The penguin was the only one who could look at the young man without a shadow of fear in his eyes. And for Cyrodiil, who had been alone all his life, Leah's appearance became some kind of hope. So Bella asked if the girl had really become the meaning of his life. The young man put his hand on his heart and admitted that his mother was right. Bella felt relieved, because she was so afraid that if he left her and her husband, he would continue to live alone. Cyrodiil was surprised that his mother was not embarrassed by the fact that Leah was not a killer whale. However, the woman said that it didn't matter at all now. Cyrodiil was her son, so nothing was more important to her than him and her husband. If their feelings were mutual, she would even be able to see her grandchildren. So she asked the guy to do everything to win the girl's heart. Cyrodiil promised his mother that he would try his best. However, first he had to complete all the paperwork, because his father missed his mother so much that he could only cope with urgent matters. Bella wished the young man good luck and was about to leave the office. She said she was heading to visit her beloved little Leah. Cyrodiil immediately put his hand on the woman's shoulder and declared that it would be unfair to leave him out. Besides, since the father left unfinished business, the mother should also have responsibility. Besides, Leah herself wanted to reveal her essence, so she asked my mother to pretend that she didn't know anything. Bella couldn't believe that the man who had made her learn about the girl's essence was saying this now. The woman could not deny that if she had known about this from the start, her attitude towards the girl would not have changed. Cyrodiil understood this perfectly well, but reminded him that Leah was very worried. Therefore, he asked that the woman not show the slightest hint of disappointment in front of the girl. The young man didn't want Leah to suffer because of this again. Thanks to their joint work, Cyrodiil and Bella were able to sort out all the documents quite quickly. The woman remembered that her husband had asked her to pass on a note to the young man. Cyrodiil read its contents and announced that today, Mom would no longer be able to meet with Leah. The guy explained that his father told him about a good place for a date, where they would go today. The young man went to the girl's room and surprised her with his appearance. He admitted that he liked Leah and asked if the feeling was mutual. The heroine saw that the guy looked happy, which meant the conversation with her mother went well. She admitted that she didn't find the guy disgusting, after which Cyrodiil invited her to go on a date with him. My father said that there was a big night market opening that would be fun to walk through. Leah knew that, according to the cliché, Something was bound to happen in places like these. They say that raccoons live on this island, so maybe you will see them at the night market. Leah decided that this was a good opportunity, so she didn't mind going for a walk. In the evening, the whole company, together with Ipris and Hanu, went to the night market. The girl took with her the staff, which she liked very much, because she was impatient to use it. Cyrodiil had to go to sea to train in transformations, so he promised to take the girl with him and teach her to control her powers. Leah thought he would be busy, but the guy thought it would be a good reason to take a little break. The girl thought that Khan and Ipris would be awkward with Cyrodiil, so she thought it would be easier to find the raccoon if they split up. She announced that she was going to explore the market with a guy, so everyone should split up for greater efficiency. Kanu stated that he was assigned to protect the lady and had no right to be distracted, but his sister pushed him and made him shut up. She immediately grabbed her brother by the hand and led him away, wishing the boys a good date. Leah was surprised by her words and didn't understand who in their right mind could think that they were a couple. In fact, anyone who looked at them would think they were a couple, because they even had matching rings and outfits. Cyrodiil kissed her hand and offered to pretend to be his partner for just one day, because then he would be the happiest werewolf in the world. Leah was very embarrassed by his behavior, so she pulled her hand away and suggested that they go to the market. The guy gave her a staff and gave her a letter to her father, so the girl decided to play along with him for one day. Together, they had fun at the party, played various games, and looked at toys. The boys even enjoyed some local snacks, and Leah was still waiting for something to happen. Suddenly, she noticed a suspicious guy hanging around passers-by. The girl saw him steal something from another man's pocket, so she grabbed his hand and stopped him. She demanded that the guy immediately return what he had just stolen. The girl's words attracted unnecessary attention, so the criminal was afraid of being exposed. It turned out to be a seagull, whose specialty was problems with kleptomania. The guy ran away but dropped the stolen item, so Leah picked it up. However, the owner of the notebook was so scared that he ran away and did not notice the loss. The girl hoped that there would be a name written inside, so she decided to take a look. However, she was very surprised when she saw text in Korean inside the notebook. The girl did not understand where in this world Korean came from and what the words meant about there being someone whose fate had not yet been determined. She couldn't just leave it like that. She needed to urgently find the owner of this notebook. So Leah turned around and asked Cyrodiil to help her search. The young man asked the knights about the owner of the notebook, and they said that this touch was similar to a man who had been suspiciously hanging around the castle for several weeks. Today, the knights caught the girl when she tried to enter the castle. Leah didn't know why she was walking around the orca's house, so she wanted to talk to the girl alone. Cyrodiil agreed with this and said that they would wait outside and would come if she liked the help. When the girls were alone, Leah showed them the notebook and asked what the symbols were. However, the stranger was not in the mood for conversation and asked why the girl needed this information at all. Leah said that she knew these hieroglyphs, so she wanted to meet the one who wrote them. After these words, the stranger suddenly became inspired and even jumped up in excitement. She wanted Leah to tell her about the symbols if she could find out who wrote them. The stranger explained that one of her distant ancestors was known as a saint. Interpreting her diary, which practically became an ancient manuscript, the girl learned something incredible. The saint was a prophet who knew the future, and these symbols were written from the beginning and end of her diary. But the girl could not decipher their meaning. Leah was very surprised and asked how the stranger understood that this was indeed a prophecy. Then the girl explained that everything that had happened so far was written down in the book, even that she would restore and read the diary. Leah guessed that the girl ended up on these lands also because of the prophecy. Everything went as it was written in the diary, except that the disappearance of magic turned out to be different. The prophecy said that only humans would be able to use magic, and after their death, magic would disappear altogether. But the family of killer whales continues to use it. The prophecy was never wrong, so the girl decided that fate had changed. Leah realized that it was as if the original story of the novel had been violated. That's why the stranger came to this place to understand why fate had changed. Leah didn't understand why the girl was so obsessed with this prophecy. However, the prisoner reported that knowledge of the unknown is very intriguing, like alchemy. Leah was very surprised and hoped she had not heard correctly. The girl looked like a mad scientist, so the heroine assumed that she was that very raccoon. Leah really didn't expect to meet raccoons in such a place, which surprised Elsa. She thought about how to convince the scientist if she met him, but now she would simply offer to solve the prophecy together. Raccoon said that she tried to change her fate, but she couldn't. But Leah herself succeeded. This meant that she was the person whose fate had not yet been determined, capable of changing the future. This meant that she could change the course of events and avoid the extinction of people and save her father. Leah promised that she would help the girl decipher the prophecy in the notebook. However, in exchange for this, she wanted the raccoon to promise that he would help her if she asked. Leah didn't yet know how to change the future, so she wanted to prepare a cure as a backup plan. The raccoon thought for a moment, and then agreed if the girl could really solve this riddle. Leah decided to investigate at home, and in the meantime, the raccoon must gather more information about the prophecy in the capital. The girl herself decided to focus on researching the members of the killer whale family and training to return to the animal, and then prevent the extinction of humanity. The next day, the girl was ready to return and took Suradelu's hand to teleport. However, this time, when the guy snapped his finger, they found themselves in the air right above the sea. Leah was scared because she didn't expect that he would teleport her straight into the water without any warning. The girl calmed down when Suradel carried them to the nearest ice floe and suggested starting with training. Leah was afraid that if she turned into a penguin, she would not be able to return back to human form. However, the young man assured her that in that case he would help her again, like last time. The guy admitted that he can actually explain how to quickly change his shape. He had never thought about explaining this process to anyone else, so he needed time to formulate everything. He asked the girl to imagine herself as an animal and analyze the elements that make up her body. Then think about putting these parts back together, rebuilding each detail that makes her up. Leah quickly became confused and did not understand how the guy could even describe this strange feeling. Suradel admitted that he learned to transform into both forms quite late, just like the girl. He admitted that he was a little different from the usual individuals, which is why he was experiencing difficulties. The girl was surprised by his words and asked who he really was. Instead of answering, Suradel simply leaned towards the heroine and asked who she wanted him to be for her. In fact, Leah really wanted to know his story. Leah didn't know if the plot changed because of Suradel, or if Suradel's life changed because the plot changed. The girl thought for a moment, then asked the young man to show him his animal form. First, she wanted to confirm whether he was really a killer whale, and then study other whales in more detail. The guy agreed and asked her to watch carefully as he transformed, because it could help her. After this, the young man began to undress so as not to get his clothes wet. Leah covered her face to keep the water out of her eyes as the boy dove into the water. The girl was convinced that Suradel was indeed a killer whale, but, unlike his unusual silver hair, his shape was rather unusual. Leah gently stroked his head and admitted that she had never seen a killer whale before. The young man emerged and the girl was able to hug him, making sure that he was very smooth and soft. After that, his form dissolved, and the next second, the girl found herself pressed against the ice floe by Suradel in his human form. The young man hovered over Leah and admired her surprised face while he had the chance. Suradel admitted that he had another gift for the girl, which suited her even better than he thought. It turned out to be a beautiful-looking hair clip, which he carefully pinned onto her head. Leah's heart was about to jump out of her chest when Suradel teased her, so the girl pushed the guy away from her. The guy didn't understand what happened, because she really liked his killer whale form. Leah was only able to talk to him about his transformation after the boy finally put on pants. After this, the girl concentrated and tried to turn into an animal on her own, but she failed. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't transform, so they decided to end training for today. Suradel asked her not to be too upset, because next time she would definitely succeed. He asked the girl not to be discouraged, because they still had to try the magic wand. The guy reminded that a simple spell can be mastered easily, for example, summoning an ice magic ball. The young man handed the girl a wand and suggested that she gradually feel her mother. Leah felt like she understood what needed to be done, so she wanted to try it. The girl stepped forward and held the staff in front of her, while Suradel encouraged her from behind. Leah cast a spell and tried to put mana in, after which an ice ball appeared right in front of her eyes. The girl was delighted, but then she could not stop, and the ball continued to grow. This continued until she was unable to hold onto it and dropped it into the water, freezing it. Leah was surprised that such a simple spell was so powerful. The girl turned out to have more magical abilities than the guy expected, so she will have to train hard in magic and control. The next day, when the big problem was solved, the girl decided to just take a walk around the city. Cyrodiil was busy and said there would be no class today, so she left for the city alone, accompanied by Hana. Leah was walking along the embankment and saw a group of people ahead that attracted her attention. The men were discussing some guy who was operating in their area and stealing wallets. The girl heard about the pickpocket and decided that she should take better care of her jewelry. It was at this moment that Leah discovered that her teddy bear and its supplies were no longer there. She saw the guy trying to escape and got angry that he dared to steal her money. This was not just money, but the precious stash of her beloved father. Hanu easily caught up with the criminal, so now Leah could get hers back. However, she didn't understand why the guy was looking at her as if she was his worst enemy. The girl decided that if he didn't want to return her things the easy way, then she would have to force him to do it. She was about to use her magic wand, but the guy panicked and asked her to stop. She said that he couldn't even imagine how important this money was to her, and the guy should find a job instead of stealing. However, the stranger stated that no one would give work to someone like him, who could not even freely enter the territory. At that moment, Khan understood everything and blocked the girl, inviting her to go back. Leah didn't understand why her companion suddenly became so serious, so she asked him to explain everything to her. Hanu explained that there are two types of people who are not allowed into the Orca territory. The first are hardened criminals, and the second are those who pose a threat to the killer whales, sharks. The girl was curious about what happened between the killer whales and the sharks that they were so eager to destroy each other. However, unexpectedly, the guy said that his whole life was ruined because of the killer whales. Leah heard about this for the first time, then was very surprised by his words. The guy claimed that all existing sharks have no biological parents. He added that it was the cursed woman from the Orca house who killed all the sharks except the mother and cubs. From his words, Leah understood that the woman from the house of the killer whales was Bella. The guy added that sharks don't have parents. They were all raised by their mother, but she didn't consider them her children. For her, his brothers and sisters are just a tool for making money or weapons of revenge. The guy didn't even know why he was telling all this to the first girl he met. He trembled with vexation as he admitted that he did not know how much longer he could live like this. The pickpocket knew perfectly well that there was a great Cyrodiil in the House of Sediment. Plus, they have Bella, who single-handedly destroyed the sharks, so they didn't stand a chance. Leah didn't understand why the boy remained under his mother's control if he hated her so much. The guy looked like an adult, so he could have just left. But the criminal believed that things were not so simple. He admitted that in the water, he despised it as an ordinary fish. He is not allowed into the lands of the killer whales simply because he is a shark. In this situation, the guy had nowhere to go except to the island where all the other sharks live. Now that the girl had caught a shark like him, she had to take him to the killer whales. Leah didn't know that the gap between killer whales and sharks was so blue, because if things continued like this, something terrible could happen. The girl couldn't just stand there and watch as the Veil House that helped her was in danger, and this guy seemed timid and unhappy with his mother. Leah wanted to use him and lure him over to her side to monitor the shark's movements, so she asked the stranger's name. At first, the young man was very surprised and wary, but he did not want to be punished again. He admitted that his name was John, after which Leah declared that from today on, he was her subordinate. The guy was very surprised when the girl added that they would not meet at this place again tomorrow. This meant that she was letting him go for now, but only for a while. The young man was very surprised and understood what this killer whale was planning. He took the chance to escape and didn't understand why he should listen to her at all. John ran away, and Leah and Hanu just watched him in silence. The girl added that she has a foolproof plan, so there is nothing to worry about. In the evening, John was worried that his mother would definitely be angry because he was caught by a killer whale, so he was unable to fulfill his quota. The boy wanted to go into the office, but several adult men came out of it. They started making fun of him because the guy had failed to meet his quota again. They thought he should be sold somewhere instead of sending him out to steal from the orca's lands. The other sharks sincerely believed that Mom should get rid of this pathetic guy as soon as possible. The mother of all sharks, known simply as Mom, demanded that John enter her office. The woman wasn't even surprised that the guy hadn't fulfilled his quota again. She reminded him that if this continues, he will be kicked off this island. The guy was afraid that if he was kicked out, he would not be able to survive. He explained that today he went to the land of the killer whales and saw a new member of their family. He said that the girl had distinctive hair, after which her mother allowed her not to fulfill the norm this week. She walked up to the young man and took him by the hands, announcing that he had a special task. The woman put a weapon in his hands and ordered him to kill this new killer whale. She admitted that if the new killer whale died, the head of the house would be in incredible pain. Although the boy agreed to this, he left his mother still doubting. The woman enjoyed the thought that she would soon be watching Bella writhe in pain. After John left, Leah and Hanu returned to the Orca home area. The girl remembered the guy's words and wondered if Mistress Bella could really do such a thing. She was sure that the lady she knew would never do such a thing, so she wanted to go and ask directly. The next morning, the whole family, except for the son, gathered at the table to have breakfast together. Almost at the end of the meal, Leah said that during her walk, she had encountered a shark. This guy was very negative towards the family of killer whales. The girl wanted to be told what happened between the sharks and the killer whale. Bella wasn't very happy about this, but she still decided that it was time to tell the truth. She was very sad when she added that it all started with one incident 30 years ago. It was an ordinary day, no different from any other. The sharks broke into the killer whale village and brought with them the body of a shark whose liver had been removed. They accused the killer whales of doing this, but they denied everything. The sharks couldn't believe that this wasn't their doing, even looking at the wounds from the liver removal. The only ones who could attack the top marine predators are humans or killer whales, and the liver removal attack method was the main clue to suspect killer whales. However, the real criminal in this case was not the werewolf, but a completely ordinary killer whale. However, even when this fact was discovered, the sharks would still blame the killer whales for what happened. They believed the crime was calculated, although the killer whales tried to explain that they did not interfere in the affairs of nature. Then, one fateful day, a fire that appeared out of nowhere broke out in the village of the killer whales. While the killer whales were trying to put out the fire in the midst of this chaos, the sharks went on a rampage, and all the killer whales in the village died that day. That day, Bella was in the Fremo house and was the only survivor. After that, all the sharks living on the island were expelled under the leadership of Fremo's adoptive parents. This was possible because they were the heads of the Orca home at the time. But even then, the sharks continued to attack her, so she was taught fencing so that she could protect herself. Leah herself already understood that in the end, she had decided to take revenge. The woman admitted that if they had just left her alone, she would not have had to kill the sharks. However, she added that these people crossed a line they should not have. As time went on, she and Fremo became a couple, and after some time, they were blessed with good news. They were so happy that they decided to have a wedding and celebrate it. However, news of their engagement reached the ears of the sharks, who were not happy. During the ceremony, they attacked, and the girl's adoptive parents died that day. Containing her seething rage at her adoptive parents' funeral, Bella went alone to where the sharks lived. She stood in the center of their village and shouted that the last of the killer whales on the continent, which they so wanted to kill, had come to them herself. Leah knew the rest of the story because Bella had won that day. Now the woman was afraid that Leah thought she was a terrible person after what happened. She wasn't proud of what she had done, but she didn't regret anything because the sharks had taken everything from her. Leah covered the woman's hand with her own and admitted that she didn't think she was horrible at all. She remembered her father and could not imagine what Bella had to go through, who had been lost not once, but even twice. The girl admitted that in her place, she would have destroyed 3 whole generations of sharks. After these words, Bella relaxed and thanked the girl for her support. Leah sympathized with the woman and asked if she really only left the baby sharks alive. Bella then added that she left one adult who could take care of the survivors. Leah still didn't know much about sharks, so she wanted to understand the issue in more detail. She thanked the woman for sharing such a personal and difficult past with her. However, Bella believed that she should thank the girl for listening to her. Leah remembered that they had agreed with John to meet tomorrow at the same place. It was clear from the guy that he had accumulated quite a few complaints, and Leah was sure that he would show up. But the guy was not there. She sincerely hoped that he wasn't pickpocketing again. The girl walked along the embankment, hoping to see John somewhere nearby. She heard from the guys in the alley that they caught a pickpocket shark yesterday. It was not easy to catch him. Even though he looked weak, he carried a weapon with him. Yet he was beautiful, so they bought him because of his ability to breathe underwater. Leah couldn't pass by because she realized that they were talking about John. She intervened in the men's conversation and demanded that they tell her where they had sold the boy. However, they were not going to share information with some girl and tried to drive her away. Leah just smiled at this because she was just waiting for such a chance. The The girl used her magic wand and froze everything around. She believed that there was no point in holding back against such scum. After her victory, she once again demanded that he give her the information, and this time she got her way. John sat on the ship and was afraid that he would now spend his whole life in slavery, after which he would be thrown away like trash. No one would think to worry about him. They would rather laugh at the fact that he was caught by people. The boy cried because he felt insignificant and not dear to at least one person. Suddenly, a noise was heard from above, as if someone was trying to get onto the ship. John immediately jumped up from his seat and was afraid that a burglar had arrived. In books, a hero would appear at such moments, but the boy did not believe that such miracles could happen in reality until the lid opened and Leah looked in on him. The girl jumped down to the guy and asked why he was crying. John didn't understand why the stranger, whom he had robbed yesterday, came to save him today. And the girl herself untied his hands and asked if he wanted to go to some rich man's aquarium. She explained that she didn't want her henchman to live in comfort with anyone else, so she extended her hand to him and invited him to join her. John was amazed that this killer whale actually came to save him, so he accepted her help. Hanu reported that the smugglers were approaching, and they needed to leave before it was too late. However, Leah smiled resolutely and said that she had one idea. The girl took out her favorite magic wand, which scared her guard. The next second, the entire boat shook because a huge ice buildup formed right underneath it. After returning to shore, the shark tried to catch his breath because he had to carry Leah and her guard on his back. The guy didn't know how the girl found out that he had been captured and why she decided to save him. Leah said that she accidentally overheard the people who kidnapped him and also took the weapon from them. John was scared because if he used it, as his mother ordered, he could be noticed on Shark Island. However, he didn't know if his life would be better if he was simply noticed. The guy believed that nothing would have changed, and he would not have been able to do this to the first person who took care of him. So he asked the girl to throw away the weapon, calling it just trash. He was very embarrassed when he thanked the killer whale for saving him. Soon the incident on the island was resolved, and it was possible to return home. However, after overexertion, Leah turned into a penguin again. Cyrodiil did not understand at all how the girl could do this to him. He didn't like that Leah returned home in the arms of her guard, because he also wanted to cuddle the girl's tummy. The penguin got angry after this and lay down on her stomach so that the guy would definitely not touch her. Cyrodiil was upset, because if he couldn't touch her belly, he could at least stroke her head. The young man laid the penguin on the pillow, covered it with a blanket, and began to gently stroke its head. Ever since Leah started using mana, for some reason, she felt like she was recharging when she was around Cyrodiil. The guy admitted that he liked the girl in human form more, but he didn't want to give up the penguin either. In the middle of the night, Leah opened her eyes and saw that Cyrodiil was still lying next to her on the bed. The girl noticed that the young man was incredibly handsome, so she wanted to touch him. It was only at that moment that she saw that she had returned to her human form again. Cyrodiil woke up and was glad that their training had finally brought results. Leah was irritated by his beautiful smile, so she asked him not to show that face to anyone else. Cyrodiil stated that since he had attracted her attention, she would have to take responsibility for his life. The girl realized that the guy really behaves as if he likes her, because he always gets embarrassed when she tries to get closer first. Leah remembered his beautiful, embarrassed face, so she wanted to tease him a little more. She asked the young man if he really wanted to stay in bed with her all night. She lowered the blanket a little and reminded him that she was now in her natural state. After this, Cyrodiil suddenly jumped out of bed, citing the late hour, and was about to run out of the room. In the end, Leah just smiled sweetly and wished him pleasant dreams about her. Only after leaving the door, the young man was finally able to calm down and was amazed by the character of this girl. And Leah herself remained lying in bed and was entertained by the face of the guy, who was simply discouraged. The next day, Bella announced that she needed to return to the capital immediately. She tried to put things off as long as possible, but she could no longer avoid them. Leah was grateful to the woman for coming here for her, because she even put her plans on hold. Leah thought that Bella was very caring, and she could no longer hide her secret from her. Before they returned, the girl wanted to gather up her courage and tell the woman everything. She pulled herself together and told the woman that she was not, in fact, a killer whale, apologizing for the lie. The girl added that she was actually a penguin, surprised by how calmly the woman reacted. Bella, in response to her confession, only smiled and admitted that the girl was truly charming. At first, Leah couldn't understand why the woman reacted so calmly to her confession. However, Bella just hugged her and said that no matter what kind of animal she was, Leah was still herself. Only now did it dawn on the woman that Leah was the penguin that Roman was looking for all over the city. The girl admitted that she really misses her father, but he despises werewolves. Bella calmed the girl down and reminded her that parents who love their children don't care what they look like. The girl hoped that this was true, but her father's hatred for the werewolf was much stronger than anyone could have thought. He once said that it was a great relief that his daughter was just a penguin. Bella suggested continuing to pretend that she was a killer whale, but with the promise that later, the girl would definitely go to her father. The woman admitted that after she found out she was a penguin, she wanted to try something. Having obtained the girl's permission, she lifted her into the air and spun her around herself. The woman seemed very happy as she played the flying penguin. Only now did Leah understand why Bella married her husband. Because they were made for each other. Since the girl was soon to leave this family, she needed to look into the library that Elsa the raccoon had mentioned before she left. There were a huge number of books around, but suddenly Leah saw a door that seemed suspicious to her. It turned out to be unlocked, and, opening this door, the girl saw another separate room. All the bookshelves were completely filled, except for one shelf. She thought it might be a clue, but she saw that all the books here were written in an ancient language. The girl was so engrossed in studying the shelf that she did not immediately notice that Cyrodiil was watching her. The girl admitted that she simply saw the doors and went in because she didn't even know that this place could be closed to visitors. Cyrodiil admitted that only he could enter this room, but the girl would always be welcome here. Then, Leah handed him the book and asked him to read what was written in it. The story took place in a world where the continent was ruled by pure-blooded people. It had dragons, various monsters, elves and gnomes, but no werewolves. Only the love of the Northern Duke and the Saint. The girl realized that this story was very similar to popular stories from her world. Cyrodiil admitted that he did not actually learn another language. He just somehow knew it. The next girl took another book and wanted to know what it was about. However, Leah was very surprised when she opened it and realized that inside there were inscriptions in her native Korean language. She immediately turned back to the young man and asked if he could read it. However, the guy no longer knew this language and was surprised that Leah spoke it fluently. The girl decided to quickly flip through the book and understand what it was about. She realized that the book contained a story about forbidden love between an angel and a demon during the war. She was disappointed when she realized that it looked like another love affair. Cyrodiil gently stroked Leah's cheek and asked how the girl knew this strange language. For someone who was born as an animal, she has always acted incredibly human, and after she successfully managed to take on human form, she said and did things that didn't quite add up. Therefore, Cyrodiil assumed that the girl was behaving just like a soul from another world. Leah was afraid that she had been discovered, so she didn't know what to do. The girl was scared, but she didn't understand how the guy guessed that she was from another world, even if she was acting strange. Suddenly, the guy stopped asking her questions and just laughed out loud. He suddenly understood everything and realized that magic had never let him down. The guy admitted that his wish came true, and it was not just a coincidence. He confessed that he was destined to love this girl, but he realized it too late. Leah asked him to stop saying strange things about fate and magic and just explain everything to her. She really wanted to know who this Cyrodiil Vale really was. However, the young man laughed and admitted that he could be whoever she wanted. Leah was confused and did not understand who was standing right in front of her. This guy wasn't in the original story, and he could use magic. He had too many secrets. The girl could only assume that he also came from another world. Cyrodiil was surprised by this assumption, but Leah looked at him quite seriously. He understood what the girl was talking about, but admitted that he was born and raised in this world. Leah noticed that the guy acknowledged the existence of other worlds, so he was clearly hiding something. Cyrodiil did not want to discuss these issues any further, although Leah was disappointed. The guy felt sorry. He wanted to tell her everything, but for now he was too scared. The young man explained that he would definitely explain everything to her a little later. He gently kissed her fingertips and confessed that she was his greatest fear. Leah didn't understand why Cyrodiil, a man who scared all werewolves, could be afraid of a simple penguin. However, the guy explained that he was afraid that the girl would fix him if she found out the truth. He announced that there were enough questions for today, and they would continue this conversation a little later. The young man leaned towards the girl and confessed that he loved her. However, She doesn't feel the same way about him, so he would like to leave it at that for now. While the girl was overwhelmed with questions, the whole family returned to the capital. Leah couldn't meet John because of his sudden departure, so she sent him a letter. She was upset that they couldn't meet, but she still considered him her first friend. She knew the boy had a dream, so she wanted this little gift of a gemstone to help him achieve it. She asked the guy to take care of himself and promised that as soon as everything calmed down, she would invite him to the capital. After returning, Bella scolded her husband, who knew from the beginning that the girl was a penguin. After that last conversation, Cyril and Leah were on rather strained terms. The girl didn't understand what the guy was hiding, why he didn't trust her, and didn't tell her everything. Suddenly, Ipris burst into the room and announced that Mr. Theodore of the Wolf family was dying. She let it slip that the guild leader and Jack had told her about it. Ipris was embarrassed that she had accidentally revealed her communication with this guy. However, she continued and reported that the young man fainted due to incomplete imprinting. Previously, it was hidden, but now the Volkov family is officially looking for the woman on whom the guy put a mark. Leah was afraid that it was because of what happened at the tournament, even though the guy looked fine at the banquet. She was worried, so she decided to visit the young man anyway. Ipris noticed that her mistress was too beautiful to be an ordinary maid. However, Leah, who dyed her hair with a potion, could easily pass for an ordinary person. The girl was going to check on Theodore's condition to find out if he really had put a mark on her. She hoped it wasn't true. But if she left it like that, she would feel awkward. Ipris was worried because the owner would have to dismantle the tree, and she couldn't do it with such a fragile body. Leah admitted that Jack had taken care of everything, as he had prepared the uniform, studied the wolf's movements, and even found a tree near the right window. Ipris was embarrassed that her fiancé was being praised so much. She warned her mistress to be careful after the girl decided to begin the operation. Leah tried to sneak across the yard and climb the tree that Jack pointed out to her. It was located right opposite the window in Theodore's bedroom, through which the boy could be seen. He didn't look too bad, but it was hard to see because of the distance. Leah heard that if a guy is near the one he imprinted on, his condition improves. She wanted to get closer to Theodore and check this version, but suddenly the young man opened his eyes and looked straight at her. The girl got scared and immediately jumped to the ground to hide quickly. She hoped that the young man didn't notice her and just happened to look out the window. However, the next second, she saw the guy who had just been lying sick on the bed calmly jump from the second floor. Leah didn't understand how the guy could run so fast if he was so ill. She was afraid that he was so frisky because he had actually put a mark on her, and now he was feeling better. The girl tried to run with all her might, but still stumbled and fell. She didn't want to use the ring, but she had no choice, because the second outcome was even worse. So Leah grabbed the ring around her neck and screamed loudly, begging Cyril to come and save her. Literally, the next second, a young man appeared out of nowhere right in front of her, frightened. However, even this did not help, because Theodore managed to catch up with the girl, and just at that moment touched her bare hand. At that very moment, Leah realized that the end had come for her. As soon as she looked at the young man's face, Cyril immediately pushed Theodore away and began to examine the girl. He noticed that she was in terrible condition and injured due to the fall. Cyril also became serious and demanded that Theodore immediately explain to him what had happened here. However, the guy noted that he should ask them since they were on his family's territory. Cyril didn't care much about this now, because Leah was wounded and he was afraid that it was the wolf's doing. Theodore didn't understand why the guy there was worried about that killer whale. Leah was afraid that if this continued, the whole situation would get out of control, so she asked Cyril to leave quickly. The young man noticed that the girl was injured and did not want to be there anymore. He promised that they would continue this conversation later, then snapped his fingers and moved. After his disappearance, Theodore finally learned that all this time he had not placed the mark on Cyril. He realized this the very moment he saw the girl in his bedroom window. He thought she was his partner. His heart was beating like crazy, and he didn't want to let her go. Theodore believed that he could not lose the girl and needed to figure out how to meet her again. The problem was that she was connected to Cyril, but it was better than his original guess. Theodore knew perfectly well that these two could be in love with each other. However, he didn't care at all. He was going to get the girl for himself. He knew that if he only got Cyril out of the way, this killer whale would belong to him. Bella walked down the hallway and wanted to invite Leah, because she couldn't remember the last time they had lunch together. The woman approached the girl's room and was about to knock, but but froze in place. She heard strange conversations that could be understood in two ways. The woman wanted to get angry and burst into the room to prevent her son from committing outrages with the girl. But at the last moment, she stopped, because she remembered what happened last time. Then she also walked in without warning and caught the couple at an inconvenient moment. Although Bella was unhappy, she still decided to leave to talk to her son later. In fact, in the room, Cyrodiil was only trying to heal the girl's wounds. He used his magic, but even with it, some of the wounds were quite painful to heal. The biggest problem was one splinter that they couldn't get out. After the treatment was completed, Cyrodiil asked why the girl had gone to the Volkov mansion in the first place. Leah was scared at first, but then she remembered that Cyrodiil would definitely believe her if he trusted her. She explained that she had come across the dying Theodore on the day of the hunting competition. She didn't want to leave him, so she saved him with the help of the elixir that Cyrodiil gave her. But when the guy woke up, he tried to mark her, and when he hit her, she ran away. Cyrodiil promised that he would never allow this to happen. He would protect the girl. Then Leah forgot about the guy, but found out that he was not feeling well, so she decided to visit him. In the end, it all ended with the young man actually putting a mark on her. Leah was upset by this, and was afraid that now Cyrodiil would be disappointed. However, the young man was angry at Theodore, who dared to covet the man who saved him. Cyrodiil promised that he would settle everything and the girl should not worry, because no one could come between them. Leah was a little disappointed, because she didn't understand what this strange guy was talking about. In the end, she really did find herself between Cyrodiil and Theodore, as Ipris had predicted. The maid was worried that the girl was hurt, and she couldn't do anything. Leah had asked her not to worry, but now she had to decide what to do with Theodore. Ipris said that if a girl can't get rid of a problem, she should relax and enjoy it. However, Leah couldn't come to terms with the fact that both guys were obsessed with her. Then Ipris suggested not to take everything seriously, because these were the best candidates for grooms, even if they had strange characters. Both of these suitors possessed beauty and muscle, as well as incredible wealth and ability. However, Leah disagreed with her and stated that the best groom was her own dad. The girl didn't know anything else and reminded him about the island. After confirmation from Elsa the raccoon, she was going to the main character Anna. It felt strange to think about it now, but Anna was the only pureblood who didn't get sick in the novel. There was a thought that it was connected with the fact that she is the main character of the story. However, Leah thought that there were other reasons, and for this, she needed to find Anna herself. So now the main question was how she could make friends with this girl. Ipris reminded that Anna hates werewolves, just like Roman, because the girl was also bullied. Suddenly, Leah came up with a plan and decided to use rumors. Before she could finish speaking, Kanu burst into the room and told her important news. He ran to tell everyone that Roman from the Magic Tower had come to the house of the killer whales. Kanu reported that the man had come to see Cyrodiil, but Leah was no longer listening to him. She was glad that her dad was here, so she wanted to see him at least from the outside. She rushed to run away to see him faster, but in the corridor, she accidentally ran into someone. The girl fell and only then noticed that she had collided with her own father. However, Roman was incredibly rude and stated that this new killer whale was very clumsy. He showed no concern or assistance to the fallen girl, trying to pass by. At that moment, Leah remembered how the man had treated her with care when she was a penguin. As expected, he didn't even recognize her, so Adelia cried bitterly. She was very curious whether her beloved father would like to see her as a human. However, now she became a werewolf, so her own father simply could not love her like that. At that moment, Cyrodiil ran up to the girl, loudly shouting her name. The young man knelt down in front of the girl and asked if everything was okay with her. However, Leah could not calm down and stop crying, because she had just been rejected by her own father. Roman noticed that Cyrodiil had forgotten his beloved penguin and had started taking care of the killer whale. The guy admitted that he spent a lot of time to find Leah, so he did not leave her to take care of this girl. However, Roman was disappointed, because as soon as this killer whale appeared, the guy stopped looking for the penguin. However, the hero stated that he had some circumstances, but Leah herself was more precious to him than any life. Roman was still furious, because this was said by the one who had abandoned the search and left for the island. The man wanted to talk about the search, but now it was all over. He was not going to apologize to the girl. Leah asked the guy to stop, saying that she herself had been inattentive. Roman confirmed that he really had nothing to apologize for, so he wanted to leave. The man said that Cyrodiil should be careful with this girl, because her acting was top-notch. The young man began to calm Leah down and promised that Roman would definitely regret the words he said. However, the man already felt regret every day, but now he was going to look for his beloved penguin alone. As soon as the man left, Cyrodiil noticed that the girl had lost consciousness due to overexertion. Leah was glad that she didn't transform in front of her father, because he hates her as a werewolf, but loves her as a penguin. The girl thought that everything was fine, because her long-standing wish had come true. In her past life, the main character was born into a very rich family. However, she had a very rare disease that was difficult to cure. They tried all kinds of treatments on her, but nothing helped, and after the birth of her brother, she became an eyesore. When she was alone, she was bored, so she often read novels, and with her family, she pretended that everything was fine. The girl really wanted to be noticed, at least on her 20th birthday. Just the day before, Leah woke up and heard her parents talking nearby. She had already lived 10 years longer than doctors had predicted, so her parents had no idea when she would finally die. Then the girl realized that she could stop dreaming about love, and that no one needed her. She did not understand why he did not love her, and on her 20th birthday, she died without ever receiving any congratulations. After that, the next time she opened her eyes, she saw her new father. The first thing this strange man did was congratulate the little penguin on his birthday. The girl was embarrassed that she was not human, but she was so happy from the love and warm hugs that she resigned herself to it. She didn't want to lose it, so she decided to just enjoy what she had been waiting for so long. After some time, Leah woke up and saw Cyrodiil sitting next to her on the bed. Leah cried because neither Ipris nor Papa recognized her and were angry with her in human form. The girl was afraid that if her father, who hated werewolves, found out that she was a penguin, he would not want to know anything more about her. She didn't know what to do in such a case, and was afraid that she was living in vain. Cyrodiil couldn't believe what he heard and shouted loudly at the girl to stop talking nonsense. He reminded her that he recognized her immediately, so she shouldn't say that. The guy admitted that it's not about what shape she's in, because he loves her the way she is. After the incident with her dad, Leah felt like the world was falling apart, but Cyrodiil's words made her feel better. She wanted to know that even if she didn't tell a guy she loved him back, he would feel the same way. It was selfish, but she didn't care if she was judged, because the fact that someone would love her forever was her hope. The young man promised that he would love her forever, even if Leah herself hated him. He vowed to be there for her even if she didn't do anything for him, even if she got sick and couldn't do anything at all. Cyrodiil promised that he would love her in any form and in any condition, simply for who she was. The girl did not understand how a young man could love her so selfishly and uselessly. Cyrodiil admitted that Roman did this only because he did not know that she was his beloved penguin daughter. Even if Roman finds out that the girl is a werewolf and hates her, her importance will not change. The young man reminded her that her existence was the salvation of his entire life. That's why he wanted Leah to stop torturing herself. After his words, the girl felt much better. She thanked the young man and hugged him tightly. After Leah burst into tears in his arms, the guy used healing magic and she felt better. Thanks to him, she quickly came to her senses. But she also felt better thanks to those who cared for her. When so many people loved her, the girl simply couldn't be sad. So she perked up and decided to make a plan about her father again. Just when the boys were getting ready for a walk, an unexpected guest visited their house. Leah was convinced that simply changing her hair could not fool Theodore and hide her identity. The young man was very embarrassed and asked if he could find out the name of the beautiful girl. She reminded him that they had already been introduced to each other, but the guy wanted to get to know each other formally. The young man introduced himself as the heir of the wolf family, but Leah was completely uninterested and answered him accordingly. She was insanely annoyed by the sweet expression that appeared on the young man's face when he looked at her. The guy noticed that the formal style of communication did not suit the girl very well, so he suggested speaking informally. He assumed that Leah guessed why he had come, and then began to undress. The young man pulled back his collar and showed off his mark under his collarbone. Cyrodiil and Leah were embarrassed by this act, but they finally received gratitude for saving them at the competition. Leah didn't do it out of gratitude, so she said the guy could leave. Theodore noted that he couldn't just leave, because now they were connected and he couldn't live without the girl. However, Leah did not understand what kind of nonsense he was talking and why he was still in this room. Theodore promised that Leah could treat him like a slave or drag him around with her everywhere, but the girl didn't like it. She stated that the guy never seduced girls, because if someone liked him, they would run away after such words. Cyrodiil barely restrained himself from laughing, but Leah was disappointed, because he himself had not gone that far. Theodore didn't understand why the young man was laughing and assumed it was because of the rumors about the night they spent together. The original hero assured that he didn't care whether it was true or not, because he could make the girl his. Leah said that Theodore was saying nasty things with such a strange face, but she and Cyrodiil had nothing. Theodore and Cyrodiil were simultaneously surprised by the girl's answer. Immediately after this, the protagonist of the original novel went on the offensive and tried to find out as much information as possible about Leah's favorite things. Cyrodiil joined him in questioning, because he didn't want to give this guy absolutely anything. At some point, the young people turned their attention to each other and completely forgot about Leah while they were arguing. Because of their bickering, the girl was tired and wanted to end it all as soon as possible. Theodore said he just dropped by to say hello, promising to come another day if possible. After he left, Leah and Cyrodiil went for a walk and did not understand why this guest had come to see them. Suddenly, Leah noticed the strange expression on the young man's face. The guy was upset and didn't understand why the girl had to tell Theodore in front of him that there was nothing between them. Although Leah herself was a little embarrassed, she nevertheless reminded that she had only told the truth. Cyrodiil didn't like this very much, but he still admitted that the girl was right. Normally, Adelia wouldn't even notice his strange behavior. However, recently, thanks to Cyrodiil's support, things have become much easier for her. Therefore, although she was not very happy about it, she still decided to give in to the young man once. With a trembling voice, she turned to Cyrodiil and promised that she would let him touch her tummy if he wanted. However, she asked him not to act as if you were his lifelong dream, because it embarrasses her. The young man calmed down a little, but said that the girl still wouldn't understand this feeling. He admitted that he envied the novel every time he held the penguin in his arms. The penguin didn't know it then, but in fact, Roman touched her tummy every time and laughed at the guy. The girl didn't care. She just set the conditions that she would allow him to touch her tummy once and only when she turned into a penguin. Cyrodiil couldn't believe what she said, so he waited impatiently for her transformation. However, the girl could not transform normally, so it was unclear when this would happen next time. Even if she deliberately turns into a penguin, she is afraid that she might not return to being a human. However, Cyrodiil had an option for this too, because she could always kiss him again. Leah threatened that if the guy rushed her, then after turning into a penguin, she would only sit in the arms of his parents. Cyrodiil stated that this was too cruel a threat, so he would calmly wait for her transformation. He admitted that he wanted to thank the girl for such great generosity. However, Leah began to refuse, because she only suggested it to cheer the guy up. But the hero knew who he was talking to, so he offered to add some precious stones to her, and he just found a nice one. The young man did not understand why the girl refused his gifts every time. Leah explained that when a male penguin likes a female, he gives her stones, so his actions resemble a marriage proposal. Cyrodiil saw nothing wrong with this, because he had confessed his love to the girl many times, and it was time for her to accept his feelings. Leah was very embarrassed and tried to say something, but the hero did not let her. He admitted that it was a joke, because he only gives jewelry because he loves it. Leah didn't think he was interested in that, so she was surprised that they had similar interests. The young man stated that this was precisely why they were made for each other. Already in her room, Leah told Ipris about what had happened, and the maid was surprised that the girl had actually promised such a thing. The maid realized that only Leah did not know that she and Cyrodiil had actually been dating for a long time. She said that even she, an open-minded person, finds it difficult to accept the fact that a girl lets you touch her belly when she is not in a relationship. She thought that if the mistress started dating, it wouldn't matter which guy she was with. However, watching the girl, she saw how happy she was next to the hero. Ipris wanted Leah to be happy, so she promised to pray that she would choose Cyrodiil. The girl added that all penguins, by nature, need freedom. The hero will provide her with this in full, and will be happy to simply be near her. But Theodore will obviously keep the girl to himself, and it will be very difficult for her with him. Suddenly, Leah realized that Cyrodiil had never really limited her. He never questioned her actions, and always trusted her. Ipris reminded that, among other things, the master's emotions were not connected with the mark. Leah understood this perfectly well, because every time the guy was upset, and it was time to leave excuses and accept her affection for him. However, The girl decided that first she needed to deal with the other one and meet the raccoon. However, as soon as she went out into the city, Leah realized that her life had become more complicated from that moment on. The girl hoped that it was an illusion standing in front of her, and not Theodore, who was pursuing her. Leah directly stated that she didn't like the fact that the young man was constantly following her. However, Theodore admitted that he came this time to invite her on a date. Leah was discouraged by his behavior and realized that she would now have a lot of problems because this guy did not take refusal at all and threatened to become her headache.